Hey everyone, per your requests, I'm starting Soul Land 5, the Rebirth of Tang today. My channel isn't monetized, so if you're able to, please support me on PayPal to help me stay active. Chapters 561 through 580 of the previous episode. Tang San enhances his cultivation by balancing extreme yin-yang energies. In the doubles tournament, he secretly supports Mei Gongzi against Meng Didi, risking his divine consciousness to channel the Azura Sword's power and secure their win. Tang San earns the Peacock Great Demon King's trust by swearing a blood oath to eternally protect Mei Gongzi, later forfeiting his solo match to his ally, Big Cat. After deepening their bond by helping Mei Gongzi form a spirit core, Tang San promises to finally remove his mask and reveal his true identity after the finals, leaving him anxious. Thank you. Now, let's get back to the story of Soul Land 5, the Rebirth of Tang San. So when morning came and the final match of the Ancestral Court Elite competition, the doubles final, was about to begin, the entire Ancestral Court Plaza was already packed. Ticket holders flooded into the venue, while those without tickets waited outside. Even though they knew Mei Gongzi would likely use her spatial abilities to teleport into the arena, they still held onto a 1-in-a-million hope to catch a glimpse of her. At the same time, waiting here meant they could get the final result of the match immediately after it ended. That was enough for them. They were here to witness a historic moment. This was the first time doubles matches were held in the Ancestral Court Elite competition. And now it looked like there would be a double champion. Whether this could be replicated in the future, nobody knew, but it was certainly a historic event. Today, the weather in the Ancestral Court was somewhat gloomy, with thick clouds creating a slightly oppressive atmosphere. However, this didn't dampen the enthusiasm of the crowd. They were filled with anticipation, eager for the grand battle to begin, and hoping for an exciting final showdown between the powerful teams. Tang San entered the Ancestral Court Grand Plaza the old-fashioned way, wearing just a hood. Although he also possessed the peacock transformation, he preferred to keep that information to himself. As one of the top 4 contestants in the individual competition and Mei Gongzi's partner, there were many rumors about him, and his popularity was quite high. But as long as he took off his mask, no one would recognize him. After all, Mei Gongzi's partner was the masked Azura. Under his disguise as Tang San, he entered without anyone bothering him. Feeling the crowd's fervor, Tang San couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The demon and nymph races revered nothing but power. The continuous emergence of strong figures from the Empyrean Dominion and the Solstice Empire was closely tied to the inherent belligerence of their people. Combined with their innate advantages and bloodline cultivation, it led to today's grand spectacle. This made him unconsciously think of the Hell Garden, that place where heaven and hell coexist on earth. Although he didn't know how the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor had achieved it, he understood that demons and nymphs becoming the most powerful beings on the planet had a lot to do with the convergence of fortune. It was this fortune that drove them to continuously grow stronger. In the future, if humans were to have a place in front of the demon and nymph races, they would have to find a way to break this cluster of fortune. Therefore, the Hell Garden was a place Tang San would definitely visit once more in the future, and it had to be before reaching the 10th Order. Once he became a god, entering it would probably be impossible. Divine energy entering that separate space might trigger something, which was why the Ancestral Court's Great Beast Fighting Arena conducted survival challenges there strictly for those below the 10th Order. He had to visit that place again. With his current strength, entering it might reveal some more things to him. Moreover, with the experience from last time and the existence of the Polar Luck Domain, there were very few things in the Hell Garden that could threaten him. In this competition, Tang San had never used the discerning eye of heaven's abilities, ensuring that his control of fortune remained his personal secret. He didn't even try to get a better draw for himself, fearing that the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor might discover his situation. But once he was in the Hell Garden, these abilities would be absolutely quintessential. Tang San was the first to arrive at the waiting area. Mei Gongzi hadn't come yet, so he sat there and waited silently, having already put his mask on in a secluded corner. Today's final wouldn't be difficult. They were well aware of their opponents. At that moment, a silver light flickered, and a graceful figure appeared beside him. The familiar and pleasant voice made Tang San smile widely. Mei Gongzi was wearing the same long silver dress, and she was also smiling sweetly at him. She looked in top condition, evidently having rested well the previous night. The victory in the individual championship had brought her increased confidence, and her aura and demeanor had changed. Being the absolute best of the younger generation and a potential future demon emperor had indeed changed her. Her voice reached his ears through sound transmission. Last night, I worked on the White Tiger transformation and, as you suggested, I kept trying to switch between the two bloodlines, looking for common points. I really discovered some interesting things. Once I truly combined them, my strength will surely increase again. The stronger and more diverse the bloodlines, the more powerful you become. No wonder you're so strong. Tang Sen smiled and nodded. She was indeed very smart and quick to understand. Mei Gongzi asked curiously, "Big brother, how many types of bloodline abilities do you have?" Even she didn't know how many bloodline abilities Tang Sen currently possessed. "Once we get back after the competition and the awards ceremony, I'll tell you everything." Thinking that he would take off his mask and show her his true face today, Mei Gongzi's eyes lit up, and she smiled widely. All right, after today's competition, he indeed needed to have a good talk with Mei Gongzi, hoping she would accept his true identity. Once they won the championship, she would be able to protect herself, so many of his misgivings would be no longer. Moreover, they would need to work together even more from now. What they wanted to achieve could not be done without close and seamless cooperation. At this moment, the arena was already crowded, and many eyes were on the waiting area. However, due to the way it was set up, only those in the VIP section had a clear view of it. In Tang San and Mei Gongzi's waiting area, it was just the two of them, while their opponents were in the waiting area on the other side. Standing side by side, they naturally became the focus of attention even from the VIP section. Tang San suddenly sensed something and glanced toward the VIP box above. He had just faintly felt a divine consciousness sweep past them, and it was clearly unfriendly. It gave him a chilly feeling. Their excellent performance in the competition, consistently advancing with great vigor, had brought them to the finals. This had certainly earned them the admiration of powerful beings like the White Tiger Demon Emperor, but it also attracted some malice. After all, the opponents of the Peacock Demon Clan far outnumbered their supporters. Even with their newfound power and support, the road ahead would still be very difficult. A figure descended from the sky on the competition stage, landing in the center. Faint light flickered around him, giving off a strange feeling. And when he appeared in the center of the competition stage, Tang San's expression immediately became more serious. Among the many emperors, if there was anyone he dreaded the most, it would definitely be the one who appeared to have no combat ability but ruled over the entire ancestral court, the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, the Master of Fate. He hadn't expected this figure to appear on the competition stage. Could it be that he was going to personally referee this match? How would he do that if he couldn't really fight? When the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor appeared in the center of the stage, the entire place fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. All eyes were immediately drawn to him. His gaze swept over the audience. A faint smile appeared on his face, and instantly, all the spectators felt as if they were bathed in a spring breeze, as though they were blessed by fate. Master of Fate, Master of Fate, Master of Fate, long live your majesty. Cheers echoed continuously throughout the ancestral court plaza. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor raised both hands slightly, and immediately, the entire place quieted down. All eyes were focused on him. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor smiled and said, "Today is the last match of this tournament. Both the individual and the doubles competitions have shown the talents and strengths of the younger generation. Especially in this first edition of the doubles competition, we've seen the mutual understanding and cooperation between the young contestants. To honor this sentiment, I will personally referee today's championship match. Please, both teams, step onto the stage." So the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor is really personally refereeing. Hearing his words, Tang Sen couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. In front of this person, especially during the battle, he was afraid he couldn't hide his abilities well enough. But there was nothing he could do. He was here, so no matter what, he had to face things head-on. Mei Gongzi and Tang Sen left the waiting area and quickly stepped onto the competition stage, with their opponents also stepping onto the stage. Standing opposite Tang San and Mei Gongzi was a strong team. They hadn't had any buys or weak opponents, and they'd fought their way to this final stage. It was an extremely uncommon combination of a demon and a nymph. Tang San and Mei Gongzi had previously encountered the Perching Phoenix duo, but this pair was different, a rather peculiar combination. On the demon side was a tall, slender male who looked sharp and upright, his gaze fixed on Mei Gongzi. Beside him stood a female in a red dress, looking somewhat plain but very serious and focused. She stood half a step behind the man, clearly showing that the demon male was the leader of this team. Tang San and Mei Gongzi already knew what team this was. The male belonged to the Red-Crowned Crane lineage, a direct disciple of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. The Red-Crowned Cranes hadn't even participated in the individual competition. A few were in the doubles competition, and this one had managed to reach the finals. His partner, the female contestant from the nymph side, hailed from the Scorching Sunflower clan. She was the only female participant from her clan in this entire competition. Tang San and Mei Gongzi had faced more than one Scorching Sunflower before, and they'd concluded that these nymphs were indeed extremely powerful. Even Tang San had a tough time dealing with the one he met in the individual competition. Their opponents in the final match of the doubles competition were indeed a unique pair. Regarding their particularities, Tang San and Mei Gongzi had also gathered some information. The Scorching Sunflower played a support role, while the Red-Crowned Crane was the main attacker, using her power to increase the power of his sword. On the surface, this combination seemed strong but not the strongest, appearing weaker than the Dragon Phoenix pair or the Perching Phoenix duo. But with that said, how could there possibly be weaklings in this competition, much less at this level? As both sides appeared on stage, facing each other, a palpable tension filled the air. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's gaze swept over both sides. Contestants, be ready. If the outcome is decided, I may end the match and declare a victor before anyone gets gravely injured. How will you know that for sure? By manipulating luck? Tang San had some doubts in his heart, but in any case, this figure was the foremost in the ancestral court. He surely knew what he was doing. Tang San suppressed his aura, trying to make himself less noticeable. Seeing that both sides indicated they were ready, the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor signaled the start of the match. Begin! Tang San's figure flickered, and he once again positioned himself behind Mei Gongzi to support her, while she took the main attack role. This was their best way to cooperate, and it also concealed Tang San's abilities most effectively. The gentle energy of the peacock transformation flowed into Mei Gongzi's body, causing her to radiate with a silver light. Her peacock blue hair fluttered lightly, filling Tang San's nose with her faint fragrance. On the other side, the Scorching Sunflower girl swayed like a willow in the wind, and vines grew out from her body. Then her humanoid figure vanished as her entire body transformed into vines. They wrapped around the Red-Crowned Crane, forming a layer of crimson vine armor. The Red-Crowned Crane pointed into the void, and a long sword appeared in its hand. The swords of the Red-Crowned Crane demons were a transformation of their own long beaks. They were nurtured from a young age, growing stronger as the Red-Crowned Crane's own power increased. Among them, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's sword reigned supreme, a divine weapon forged from a demon emperor's beak. At this moment, when the Red-Crowned Crane shook his long sword, 9 red light clusters, each resembling a small sun, appeared on the blade, emitting a blazing radiance. Coupled with the Crane Demon's armor, they caused massive heat waves to radiate from his entire body. The incredibly sharp sword aura, accompanied by intense heat, made the Crane Demon appear as if he were burning. With a sharp bird cry, a pair of wings unfolded behind him. Though separated from their opponents by hundreds of meters, he did not move a single step. Instead, he simply thrust his sword into the void. This seemingly simple sword strike appeared to pierce through space, and the extremely sharp sword intent arrived in front of Mei Gongzi in an instant. Mei Gongzi hadn't even deployed her spatial power before the opponent's sword intent arrived. It wasn't sword aura, but pure sword intent, a spiritual attack. Mei Gongzi's eyes shone brightly, and the celestial plume in her hand quivered. The space in front of her instantly became layered and ethereal, constantly shifting. As the sword intent approached her, the light around her seemed to be swallowed, giving the impression that space was collapsing. The surging sword intent then shot skyward, star shift. With Tang San's assistance and her recent insights into star shift, Mei Gongzi was now able to use it more or less freely. And as it turned out, this signature divine technique of the Peacock Demon Clan clearly wasn't just for countering physical attacks but could neutralize all forms of attack. The sharp sword intent was redirected into the sky, like a twisted pillar of light that shot straight into the clouds. This impressive visual effect showcased the intensity of the sword intent. Tang San stood right behind Mei Gongzi, feeling the changes in the sword intent, and couldn't help but be slightly moved. The Scorching Sword pair, as they were nicknamed, was not merely the Scorching Sunflower's heat to imbue the Red-Crowned Crane's sword. These two had clearly been together for more than just a day or two. They had likely been together since the beginning of their cultivation. The strength of that sword intent surpassed the god level. It gave off a feeling of being one with nature, one with the heavens. It was an incredible level of attainment for a swordsman. With this result in mind, it was clear that the heat of the Scorching Sunflower did not merely serve to amplify the power of the Red-Crowned Crane's sword in battle, but also to temper the sword. After who knew how many years of tempering, the sword formed from the Crane Demon's long beak had been refined to the level of a divine weapon. Furthermore, the tempering did not only refine the sword itself, but also the spiritual power of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's successor, and that was what allowed him to possess such incredible sword intent. This opponent was more difficult to deal with than expected. No wonder they could defeat so many powerful opponents. Just as the initial contact was made, the 9 light clusters on the 9 Suns sword shone brilliantly. The Red-Crowned Crane tapped the ground with his toes, his wings suddenly flapped, and in the next moment, he shot toward Mei Gongzi and Tang San like a bolt of lightning. Wherever he passed, the air distorted intensely, and the scorching heat made the surrounding space extremely unstable. At that moment, Tang San's voice echoed in Mei Gongzi's mind. Clash with him head-on. Without hesitation, Mei Gongzi engaged into the celestial dance, the celestial plume in her hand glinting silver as she faced the attack. The sharp sword aura flashed and vanished, arriving directly in front of Mei Gongzi. Mei Gongzi's delicate body slightly shifted, and the edge of the celestial plume made contact with the tip of the opponent's sword. With a crisp ding, Mei Gongzi felt a surge of scorching airflow carrying a sharp sword intent into her body. Meanwhile, the red-crowned crane felt the layered spatial fluctuations attacking him, poised to tear him apart. The scorching airflow surged and burned the constantly shifting spatial power, dissolving it. At the same time, the sharp sword intent within Mei Gongzi's body was immediately washed away by the spatial power rotating at high speed, and the scorching sword intent silently dissipated. Indeed, Star Shift merged offense and defense flawlessly. Both sides retreated simultaneously, but in the next instant, thousands of energy blades appeared almost simultaneously as both launched an all-out offensive. Tang San did not interfere directly. He simply continued to channel his internal energy into Mei Gongzi through the peacock transformation, and his spiritual power permeated her sea of consciousness as he used his spirit core as a transmitter, enhancing her spiritual power. During this competition, Mei Gongzi's cultivation, spiritual power, and insights had all greatly improved. But how could these insights be integrated into her own abilities? Nothing was better than practice facing powerful opponents. Therefore, for this final match, the stage was hers. This match was the best training for her. Tang San himself did not need such battle experience. He had far more experience than anyone else. Thus, his only purpose now was to help Mei Gongzi succeed. Mei Gongzi used the celestial plume in her hand as a sword as she wove through space using the celestial dance. Despite the high temperature that caused space to distort, she used her divine weapon to open spatial gate after spatial gate, rift after rift, and fought the opponent using Star Shift. The red-crowned crane's sword aura was extremely sharp, but it could not break through the defenses of Mei Gongzi's celestial plume. Both sides unleashed countless energy blades, and the air screamed as they cut through it. Yet neither side showed any signs of being overwhelmed. The sword intent in the red-crowned crane's eyes remained sharp, showing no fear even though he was facing the individual champion. Instead, he fought with increasing bravery, and his sword intent grew stronger and stronger. However, he noticed that his opponent was the same. The energy blades formed from her spatial power were extremely sharp, and under the draw of her strange dance, spatial power continued to gather even under the burning heat of the solar fire. Moreover, his sword intent seemed to have no effect on her. Her physical strength was extremely strong, and with the guidance of Star Shift, she could handle the energy blades that her celestial plume didn't catch. What he didn't know was that at this moment, in addition to using the peacock transformation, Mei Gongzi also used the white tiger transformation for defense and to enhance her fighting spirit. She was actually attempting to merge the two bloodlines mid-fight and have them support each other. Energy blade crossed with energy blade as the auras of both sides continuously clashed. The strength of the red-crowned crane's sword intent lay in its ability to pierce even the void. And with the locking power of this sword intent, no matter how Mei Gongzi maneuvered and shifted her position using spatial power, the opponent could always lock onto her, and the energy blades would still reach her even through the distorted space. As the 9 suns burned, the red-crowned crane's long sword became brighter and sharper by the moment, and every move seemed to rend the space asunder. Under the scorching temperature, the sword itself appeared to be slowly reducing in size, yet its power only grew with every moment that passed. It was evident that this was a kind of cultivation method developed by the scorching sunflower and the red-crowned crane together, and its effects were plain for everyone to see. Even with the celestial plume, the sharp sword aura was becoming increasingly difficult for Mei Gongzi to handle. If not for the white tiger transformation's physical strength, she might not have been able to endure it. Yet even in the face of such pressure, Tang San did not give her any support other than pure bloodline power and spiritual power. Mei Gongzi, in turn, did not retreat in the face of pressure, continuously using her own sword intent to neutralize the opponent's offensive. Tang San seemed calm and composed as he stood behind her, but in reality, his attention was entirely on the chief referee standing at the edge of the field. Even compared to the mighty opponent in front of them, the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor was the truly terrifying one. It was most important not to let him see through Tang San's secrets. Ah! With a loud shout, the red-crowned crane, who had been attacking continuously, suddenly pulled back his long sword and flew backward. His armor rapidly melted into his skin, becoming like a second layer of crimson skin. He raised the long sword in his hand, which suddenly burst into dazzling brilliance. In that instant, even the 9 suns became indistinguishable. There was only the long sword emitting fierce sword aura, and behind it, a pair of fierce red eyes that burned like 2 suns. The scorching sunflower's tempering did not just refine the sword but also the wielder. The two had cultivated together since childhood for this precise moment, and now the results of their efforts were on full display. The two staked everything. The scorching flames burned even their very essence. They did not hesitate for even a second. The red-crowned crane knew very well that although they seemed to have gained the upper hand, Mei Gongzi's defense was very steady. Thanks to the properties of Star Shift, Mei Gongzi's energy consumption was significantly lower than theirs. On the other hand, he could not maintain the 9 sun sword state for too long. Once it reached peak temperature, the sword itself would be consumed, and he had to end things quickly. Otherwise, his sword would be turned to nothingness and it would take an inordinate amount of time to create a new one. Mei Gongzi was stronger than they had imagined. Ordinary spatial power couldn't block their attacks, but Mei Gongzi used the changes in space to layer upon layer neutralize their attacks. Additionally, the magical star shift always managed to deflect their fierce sword aura and intent, preventing sustained harm to her. Mei Gongzi had been on the defensive, but very steadily, giving them no opportunity to exploit. This was the strategy that Tang San and Mei Gongzi had discussed. Facing an opponent with extremely sharp attack capabilities, they decided to counter with a war of attrition. It was clear that the opponent had a trump card. If they engaged head-on and the opponent seized an opportunity, the result would be a lot less than desirable. Otherwise, it was clear that in terms of overall strength, the opponent was inferior. Even though they undoubtedly had better coordination, Tang San and Mei Gongzi had a significant advantage in spiritual power, not to mention their elemental attributes. The red-crowned crane indeed had a first-tier bloodline, but it was relatively weak among first-tier bloodlines. The scorching sunflower, despite her strength, could not make up for this shortcoming. Even if the two complemented each other, could they compare to the combined bloodline power and spiritual power of Tang San and Mei Gongzi? Hardly. With that in mind, Tang San felt that adapting to the opponent's attacks rather than going for a rigid offensive was the best solution. Eventually, the scorching sword pair would be the one to fall. Moreover, defending while enduring the impact of the sword intent was highly beneficial for Mei Gongzi. In the process, she would gain a better understanding of her two bloodlines and how to use them together. The red-crowned crane clearly realized that continuing was futile, so he abruptly paused for a moment, then erupted with power. It understood that to defeat Mei Gongzi and Tang San and win the championship, it had to launch an unparalleled powerful attack at its peak to crush the opponents. He was well aware that the opponents had some kind of supreme divine artifact, the weapon that had defeated Meng Didi. He also felt the sword intent coming from it. How could an heir of the sword Saint Demon Emperor not feel it? But it was a gamble he had to take, and his gamble was that Mei Gongzi could not use that sword intent again, at least for a while. And indeed, his bet was correct. Mei Gongzi indeed could not use it again. Not only was it not her ability, but even for Tang San, the price for using the Azura sword once more was not something he could pay casually. But did being unable to use it mean they would lose the match? That remained to be seen. Tang San extended his right hand, grasping Mei Gongzi's right wrist. In that moment, with his body pressed against her back, he even felt the contraction of her back muscles upon contact. Mei Gongzi could sense his presence, clear as daylight. For some reason, her heart fluttered when she sensed this presence, and at the same time, she also felt an unusual sense of reassurance. At this moment, the red-crowned crane exploded with power. The intensely burning sword aura burst forth almost instantly. The terrifying sword intent soared to the heavens, and the red-crowned crane and the scorching sunflower contestant vanished simultaneously. What remained was a single sword light. A sword light that could shock the heavens and make ghosts and gods weep. Man and sword as one. Man and heaven as one. In that moment, the red-crowned crane even felt an exhilarating sensation, as if he had pierced through the firmament and broken through the bottleneck that had always troubled him. This was the absolute pinnacle, the strongest strike he had ever launched in his entire life. Even if it meant completely burning off his long beak, consuming his life force, and requiring a long time to recover afterward, he had no regrets. Being able to unleash such a strike before reaching the god level would bring unparalleled benefits when he did reach that level in the future. The earth-shattering sword light descended from the sky, clearly much stronger than Big Cat's strike in yesterday's competition. After all, this was the combined power of two individuals, forged through years of sword cultivation. A true desperate strike. It contained an explosive power that seemed poised to obliterate everything in its path. At this moment, Mei Gongzi moved. She gently moved the celestial plume in her right hand, the shimmering silver light tracing a beautiful arc in the air. The silver light was not intense, but the arc carried a sense of perfect balance and calmness. The soft light arc gently moved upward, creating faint silver ripples in the air. On one side, there was a young man's explosive release of power that sacrificed everything, further ignited by his fiery partner. On the other, another young man's hand was guiding his lovers as she painted the sky, drawing a perfect circle. One side was fierce, the other serene, and the next moment they clashed. Mei Gongzi's delicate body leaned into Tang San's embrace. At that moment, she felt her body, bloodline, and spirit had completely merged with Tang San's. They were no longer separate. Even their heartbeats were in the same rhythm. You are me, I am you. The silver ring of light radiated a gentle glow in the air. That extraordinary, almost impossibly powerful sword strike silently vanished within that peaceful circle. Yes, it vanished just like that, disappearing without a trace, leaving no mark behind. Mysterious circles of heaven. This time, just like the first time she'd done it, Tang San personally guided Mei Gongzi. Mei Gongzi's eyes were radiant, and she even felt that she had advanced. Her understanding of space had been elevated to another level. That circle seemed to open up a gate to a new world, a new sky. It erased the intense sword light like a cloud erasing the moon reflected in a pond, leaving no trace behind. Not a hint of sword intent touched them. The perfect unity of physique, bloodline, and spirit allowed Mei Gongzi's spiritual power to fully transcend to another world at that moment. And although it fell back in the next moment, she had felt a lot in that fleeting instant. She sensed the incredibly powerful auras in each private box and the multitude of weak ones around her. Divine consciousness. This must be what divine consciousness feels like. She didn't know how Tang San had done it, but she was absolutely certain that at that instant, when Tang San's spiritual power completely fused with hers, their spiritual power had transformed into divine consciousness, enabling them to draw this perfect circle. This was a true divine technique in every sense. In the air, the red-crowned crane's figure reappeared, and the scorching sunflower also appeared beside him. They were both pale as paper, and their fiery momentum was nowhere to be seen. They floated down to the ground, looking at their opponents that were now standing side by side, hand in hand. They lowered their heads in despair. The match was over. Even without the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's announcement, the match had already ended, and the outcome was already decided. Then the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's melodious voice rang out.
Asura, Mei Gongzi, congratulations.
You are the winners of this doubles competition. Tang San instinctively turned his head to look at the Demon Emperor, feeling slightly shaken. When announcing the victory, the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor had placed Tang San's name first, not Mei Gongzi's. Had he sensed something? When using the mysterious circles of heaven, Tang San relied entirely on the fusion of his own spiritual power with Mei Gongzi's, using the power of the blood oath as a conduit. This temporarily elevated their spiritual power to the level of divine consciousness, ultimately neutralizing the opponent's desperate strike. This conveniently allowed him to avoid using another bloodline power and prevent the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor from probing his secrets. And yet, it seemed the latter had still sensed something. Yes, Tang San utilized the power of the blood oath. As a former god king, he understood such oaths very well. He had willingly made the blood oath for Mei Gongzi partly because it allowed him to better protect her, to sense immediately when she was in danger, and partly because it could serve as a medium to enable their powers to combine. Mei Gongzi turned to look at Tang San. They had won. They had won. Absorbed in her enlightenment, she hadn't even paid much attention to what had happened. She looked down at her hand and the hand holding hers. When performing the mysterious circles of heaven, he held her right hand with his right hand, but now as they stood side by side, he was holding her right hand with his left. She had a peculiar feeling. As his hand held hers, it felt so natural, as if it was meant to be, as if it should have always been this way. Tang San looked at her too, with a smile on his face, showing no intention of letting go. Since he had already decided to take off the mask and let her know everything, there was nothing to hold back. He had held her as they used the mysterious circles of heaven. Now he was holding her hand, and he would inevitably hold her heart. In any case, by using a divine technique to neutralize the opponent's strongest strike, they had finally won the match. All the glory belonged to Mei Gongzi, who was standing forward with Tang San slightly behind her. The thunderous cheers almost instantly resounded through the heavens. Double champion, both in the individual and the doubles competitions, Mei Gongzi had achieved the highest honors. Undoubtedly, at this moment, She had reached the pinnacle of her life. Her delicate body quivered slightly, but the warmth from the large hand holding hers made her turbulent emotions feel like they had found a safe harbor. At this moment, her eyes became a little moist. Since childhood, within the Peacock Demon clan, she had always been an outcast. Only her mother brought her warmth. Her father was strict at that time, urging her to cultivate continuously for as long as she could remember. Gradually, her mother had told her many things, narrating the tragic stories of humans. As she grew older, she began to understand her responsibilities as a human. Her childhood never seemed to be associated with happiness. Perhaps only while helping her mother sell milk tea in the shop did she feel somewhat relaxed. On the surface, she was the little princess of the Peacock Demon clan, but no one had ever regarded her as a clan member. In their eyes, she was a mongrel with lowly human blood. She had always held back her anger, working hard to prove herself. When the Peacock Great Demon King realized that she was more diligent than her peers, even without his urging, his strictness gradually faded. Most of her time was spent improving herself, diligently cultivating, striving to become stronger, all to protect her mother and to one day stop being ridiculed. The cold stares and mockery around her were her motivation to move forward. She wanted to show everyone with her abilities that being human was not a weakness. Humans could be strong too. At this moment, she stood at the highest point of the young generation on the demon continent. Years of internal repression and frustration seemed to have completely released at this instant. Tears uncontrollably streamed down her fair cheeks. If not for that warm hand, she feared she would lose control and cry out loud. Tang San stood silently beside her, smiling as he watched her. To him, cheers and glory were unimportant. He only wished for her well-being and happiness, and that was his greatest joy. In his eyes, there was only her, only that figure. His heart had long been filled with her, in his previous life and in this one as well. He could feel her hand was somewhat cold, but she was certainly feeling warm. The tension he felt within her was slowly easing up. And although she was crying, there was a stubborn pride in her eyes, her red lips tightly pressed together, and her delicate body quivering slightly. "Congratulations to you both." A gentle voice caught their attention. Even though the cheers of the audience grew louder and louder, they could not drown out this soft voice. Tang San bowed slightly, saluting the person before him, the one whom he feared the most. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The celestial fox demon emperor looked at him calmly. "You have a great tribulation in your destiny. Do you know that?" Tang San was slightly taken aback but felt a chill in his heart. The celestial fox demon emperor continued, "You are very strange. When I first saw you, I felt you were strange. Your destiny is unusual. It's almost unthinkable for me to be unable to see it clearly. But I can sense that your tribulation is approaching. This is what I can see. The tribulation precedes fortune. Only by overcoming it can you achieve your fortune. It seems to be a path to the heavens. Whether you can pass this tribulation is up to you." At this moment, Mei Gongzi had also come to her senses and couldn't help but ask eagerly, "What kind of tribulation is it?" The celestial fox demon emperor smiled and said, "I only control destiny. I do not peer into the secrets of heaven. That, as far as I know, is your job, young lady. And speaking of that, your fate is also peculiar. He is your companion, and when you are by his side, your destiny will soar." He drew a long breath, then continued, "This is a unique moment. Who knows if anyone will ever be double champion again? With that in mind, consider this a little gift from me." As he said this, his gaze turned back to Tang San. "I hope to see you again in the not-too-distant future." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Tang San nodded slightly and saluted him again. Without a doubt, the words of the celestial fox demon emperor stirred up a great wave in his heart. This so-called master of destiny, a person capable of controlling others' fate in the literal sense, would not say such things without reason. What Tang San couldn't determine was whether the tribulation mentioned was something the celestial fox demon emperor himself would bring upon them, or if it was a tribulation inherently present in his destiny. Although he also possessed the celestial fox vision, Tang San himself had no awareness of this. However, he was now fairly certain that the celestial fox demon emperor had not manipulated his fate. The words of the master of destiny had already made Mei Gongzi turn pale. There were too many legends about him, and even though his words were somewhat ambiguous, no one would doubt them. What kind of tribulation will befall Azura? The excitement of just winning the championship felt like it had been doused with cold water. Mei Gongzi gripped Tang San's hand tighter. Tang San smiled at her. "It'll be fine. For you, I'll live well." Mei Gongzi took a deep breath. "After receiving the award, we'll leave immediately and have my father take us back. Once we're back in Kali City, we should be safe." "Okay," Tang San replied softly, his eyes faintly gleaming. In fact, Tang San had long suspected the actual cause of the tribulation mentioned by the celestial fox demon emperor. He was too conspicuous. As a human, he was simply too dazzling. Even though he had tried to keep a low profile, being in the semifinals of the individual competition and winning the doubles championship was still very attention-grabbing. Moreover, he was different from Mei Gongzi. Mei Gongzi was ultimately a representative of the Peacock Demon clan. But what about him? He had registered as a human from the get-go, and though not everyone knew that, they were bound to find out sooner or later. Was it possible for a human to achieve such things in the ancestral court? And if it was possible, was it permissible? A human with no real backing reaching this point, how could it not arouse apprehension? He hadn't originally planned to participate. Even if he was going to, it was just to see how strong the younger generation of demons and nymphs was. But Mei Gongzi's arrival changed his mind. He wanted to accompany her, help her, and safeguard her in the competition. Thus, he had deliberately avoided thinking about the consequences that a high ranking would bring. But the competition was over, and the consequences were finally coming. Well, bring it on. If it's going to happen, let it happen. I am no longer powerless to resist. Under the guidance of the staff, Tang San and Mei Gongzi went to one side of the competition stage to wait. Next, the top 16 contestants from the individual competition and top 16 pairs from the doubles competition would take the stage. The award ceremony was about to begin. The one responsible for presenting the awards was still the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor. The Master of Destiny once again stepped to the center of the stage, pressing his hands down lightly, and instantly, the entire audience fell silent. This ancestral court elite competition is coming to an end. As with previous years, it is a grand event for the ancestral court and the entire demon continent. We have witnessed the brilliance of the younger generation gradually bloom and seen many future stars, especially those of you who are now on the stage. I hope you will soon continue to climb to new heights. In this competition, besides the traditional singles event, we have specially included a doubles event to encourage our various clans to abandon prejudices and cooperate with each other. We are pleased to see many cross-clan combinations and even demon-nymph combinations that have demonstrated the effect of 1 + 1 being greater than 2. For years, the ancestral court has been researching the integration and cultivation of different bloodlines. When individual strength reaches its limit, perhaps cooperation with a complementary partner can lead one to achieve greater heights. In the future, the doubles event and even team events will gradually appear in the ancestral court elite competition. We hope all clans will continue to strive for excellence. His calm voice spread throughout the ancestral court plaza, invisibly stirring the audience's emotions and filling them with excitement. The next ancestral court elite competition will continue to undergo reforms, starting with the addition of team events. The exact number of participants has yet to be determined and will be decided after the Ancestral Court Council's deliberation. However, it has been decided that the next Ancestral Court Elite competition will no longer have bloodline tier restrictions. Any bloodline can participate. Selections will start from the major cities, and top contestants will come to the Ancestral Court for the final competition. So regardless of your bloodline, as long as you believe you have the strength and means to defeat your opponents, you can register. The future Ancestral Court Elite competition will be renamed the Demon Continent Elite Competition, and it will be an opportunity for all young people, of all races, to rise. These words caused the entire audience to erupt in excitement. It was well known that the Ancestral Court Elite competition had always been dominated by those with high-tier bloodlines. Even those who believed they had exceptional talent and combat abilities could not participate if their bloodline tier was not up to par. Such a relaxation of the rules was undoubtedly a great opportunity for clans with lower-tier bloodlines, giving them at least a chance to showcase themselves. How could this not make those with lower-tier bloodlines ecstatic? The honor of the Ancestral Court Elite competition was incredibly important to the younger generation. Although those who ultimately reached the finals would mostly be from high-tier bloodlines, at least the lower-tier bloodlines now had a chance. And more importantly, they had a chance to be noticed. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor once again raised his hands and motioned to the crowd, and the entire audience fell silent. You, young people aspiring to participate in the Demon Continent Elite competition, you must work harder than you ever have in the following years. You might just change your destiny. With that said, next we will present the awards to the finalists of this tournament. First, we will give out the rewards for the top competitors. The contestants who made it to the top 16 in the individual and doubles competitions, please come forward. The top 16 had already received the most important reward, the recognition of the sacred mountains, the fact that the emperors had witnessed their prowess. Different emperors had different criteria, but they usually prioritized certain bloodlines. After all, the strength of those who made it to the top 16 usually didn't differ too much. Even someone like Meng Didi, despite his strength, had been eliminated in the doubles competition round of 16. There were also contestants who were not recognized. If a contestant made it to the top 16 by luck of the draw and their strength was not up to par, or they didn't show enough growth potential, they might not catch the eye of an emperor. Conversely, if a strong contestant was eliminated due to bad luck, they might still be acknowledged by multiple emperors. The first to be awarded were those with the lowest achievements, those who were eliminated in the round of 16. In other words, there were 8 contestants from the individual competition and 16 from the doubles, for a total of 24. However, only 18 could come to receive their awards. The remaining 6, mostly due to serious injuries, could not attend. Their rewards would be sent directly to them. Meng Didi and his sister did not come. Meng Didi was severely injured, but the reason for Meng Deshi's absence was unknown. Trays were brought onto the stage, and the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor personally handed them to the contestants. Each tray contained 1 or more tokens of recognition from emperors. In addition to the tokens, those who had gotten this far received a unified reward, 10 amethystine coins. It didn't sound like much, but the amethystine coin was the highest level currency on the continent. Even when auctioning divine artifacts, amethystine coins were not used for purchasing, which only served to highlight their rarity and value. Amethystine coins almost never circulated in the market because they were extremely precious in and of themselves. They were considered invaluable treasures for cultivation. Those who possessed amethystine coins rarely sold them or used them as currency. Instead, they kept them to absorb their pure energy during cultivation. After receiving their rewards, the contestants left the stage under the guidance of the staff, and the number of people on stage significantly reduced. Next were the rewards for those who had reached top 8, and they were noticeably more substantial. Firstly, the number of Emperor tokens increased significantly. Almost all contestants received recognition from multiple emperors. This was the case for both the individual and the doubles contestants. Moreover, the reward in amethystine coins increased to 50. It seemed that the organizers hadn't bothered to prepare personalized rewards for these people, but none of them had the slightest intention to protest. Absolutely no one had amethystine coins to spare, so how could they refuse? Next, we will present the rewards for the top 4. Please enter. The top 4 meant those eliminated in the semifinals, 2 pairs from the doubles competition and 2 contestants from the individual competition, among whom Tang San. Walking out with him was a contestant from the Poison Dragon clan. As they walked out together, the contestant gave Tang San a cold glance, with a hint of disdain on his lips. Tang San pretended not to notice and casually walked forward. The rewards for the doubles competition seemed more significant at this point because it involved 2 participants, yet each person's reward was the same as in the singles competition. This was why many strong contestants chose to participate in the doubles competition alone, and why some opted to forfeit the singles competition early to conserve strength for the doubles. 6 trays were brought onto the stage, and the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor personally handed them to the contestants. Tang San received his tray, neatly arranged with 6 Emperor tokens. Yes, 6. The Poison Dragon standing beside him only had 3. Tang San quickly identified which emperors the tokens belonged to. The championship reward included tokens from all emperors. This was the mandate of the ancestral court. Since Tang San was already the doubles champion, he would receive a full set. The 6 tokens before him were from emperors who genuinely acknowledged his abilities, the ones who had already made their decision before today's event. The 6 tokens belonged to the Destiny Master Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, the Unbreakable Sky-Splitting Demon Emperor, the Heaven-Crossing Earth-Piercing White Tiger Demon Emperor, the Cloud-Soaring Sword Saint Demon Emperor, and, unexpectedly, the Sun-Nurtured Sunborn Nymph Emperor and the Earth-Suppressor Earthshade Nymph Emperor. The first 4 were within Tang San's expectations. He already had a token of the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, so this was the second one. The Sky-Splitting Demon Emperor's token was somewhat surprising. He had expected something from the Mammoth Demon Emperor instead. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor's Sacred Mountain had also recognized him before, and the White Tiger Demon Emperor's token likely came due to Mei Gongzi. But the tokens from the Sunborn Nymph Emperor and the Earthshade Nymph Emperor were truly unexpected. And having a token from one of them was one thing, but both? There was absolutely no way this was a coincidence. Could they have sensed his yin-yang energy? Their tokens were also interesting. A small pink flower and a small gray-blue flower. They emitted seemingly gentle energy waves, but when Tang San scanned them with his spiritual power, he immediately sensed the violent energy within. These were likely actual flowers produced by the 2 top-ranked nymph emperors. It seemed that the Scorching Sunflower and Netherman Flower contestants he had defeated had said something to their clans, or maybe the yin-yang energy he'd left within them had been detected. In any case, that was a concern for later. Since they'd handed him tokens, it was likely that they didn't view him with enmity. Tang San had received the greatest number of tokens among those eliminated in the semifinals. After all, gaining recognition from the emperors was not an easy task. These tokens were not given lightly. Possessing a token meant that if he chose to pledge allegiance, that emperor would surely accept. In addition to the 6 tokens, the top 4 contestants received another reward, a storage ring. It had a purple gemstone that shimmered with innate light. A quick scan with his spiritual power revealed the energy fluctuations within. It was filled with amethystine coins, and there were a lot of them. A total of 200 coins, 4 times the amount given to the top 8 contestants. Tang San had always been curious about amethystine coins. He had heard that emperors used them for cultivation, but this was his first time actually seeing them. Although he didn't get any specific item, he also had no complaints whatsoever about the amethystine coins. Next were the runners-up. Only 3 were on the stage this time. Big Cat, the runner-up in the individual competition, and the Scorching Sword pair, who had just lost to Tang San and Mei Gongzi in the doubles competition. The 3 contestants stepped forward together. Among the others, only Tang San had remained on stage. The staff had led the others off. Soon, Tang San and Mei Gongzi would receive their champion rewards. Mei Gongzi twice over. Big Cat and the Scorching Sword pair approached the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor and bowed. Trays were brought forward, and Tang San immediately noticed that the tray in front of Big Cat had more tokens than the others. Big Cat had received the recognition of 6. The Sky-Splitting Demon Emperor, the Heaven-Crossing Earth-Piercing White Tiger Demon Emperor, the Golden Mammoth Demon Emperor, the Cloud-Soaring Sword Saint Demon Emperor, the Thousand-Faceted Glazed Glass Nymph Emperor, and the Indestructible Adamant Nymph Emperor. These were also 6 tokens, matching Tang San's previous achievement. Almost all of them were emperors skilled in attack and defense. However, apart from the tokens, the runner-up reward no longer included anything else. There was no ring and no amethystine coins. Besides the tokens, the tray was empty. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor said, "Wait aside for now. There will be other rewards for you shortly." The 3 contestants, led by the staff, stepped aside. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor turned his gaze to Tang San and Mei Gongzi, smiling, "Come up together. Your rewards will be given together." This naturally referred to the 2 champion titles of Mei Gongzi and the 1 champion title of Tang San. The 2 of them stepped forward together and stood before the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor looked at Mei Gongzi and smiled. "I never expected the Peacock Demon clan to rise again. The Celestial Fox controls destiny. The Peacock peers into the secrets of heaven. Once, our 2 clans guided the direction of the Demon Continent. I am truly happy for the revival of the Celestial Plume. I look forward to you leading the Peacock Demon clan to new heights, guiding the demons and nymphs alongside me." Mei Gongzi bowed slightly. "Thank you for your recognition." The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor nodded at her, then turned his gaze to Tang San. As he looked at Tang San again, there was a complex expression in the eyes of the Master of Destiny. "I don't know why, but you give me a very special and elusive feeling. As the so-called Master of Destiny, I obviously don't feeling. The reason I gave you advice earlier was not because of you, but because of her. Her fate seems intertwined with yours, closely linked. If something happens to you, it will greatly affect her. But the future of the Ancestral Court needs her. Therefore, I will not interfere with your fate. It will depend on yourself." Tang San did not speak. He only bowed slightly again. In the face of this being, it was best to speak less. He had been as careful as possible, but the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor could still sense something from him. Some things were truly beyond control. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor waved his hand, and the staff brought 2 trays. Compared to the previous trays, these were significantly larger. On the trays, radiant and resplendent, were the tokens from the various emperors. 9 Demon Emperors, 7 Nymph Emperors, a total of 16 Emperors tokens were neatly arranged on the trays. The difference was that Tang San's tray had 1 set, while Mei Gongzi's tray had 2 sets, totaling 32 tokens. After observing the energy fluctuations within each token for a moment, Mei Gongzi suddenly looked at the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor and said, "Your Majesty, can I exchange these tokens for 1 favor from you?" Even though the 32 tokens in front of her represented the collective recognition of the strongest beings of the era, she still spoke without wavering for a second. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor seemed to know what she was going to say. He shook his head, however. "No. Destiny cannot be easily interfered with, especially certain special destinies. Everything should be arranged by the heavens themselves. Let destiny run its course." Mei Gongzi was about to say something more but found herself unable to speak. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor said loudly, "Next, we will present the final rewards. Reaching the finals proves your strength and fortune are top-notch, and you are the future pillars of the Ancestral Court. The Ancestral Court has specially selected 10 divine items to reward you. As for which one that is, well, insight is also a part of strength, so you'll have to make the decision yourself. Each of you can choose one. The champions choose first, followed by the runners-up. Of course, Mei Gongzi can choose twice. Yes, this was the final reward, the selection of the 10 divine items. All contestants knew beforehand that the champion would be rewarded with a divine item, but the fact that the runner-up also had divine items to choose from delighted the 3 runners-up present, especially the Scorching Sword pair in the doubles competition, who would get 1 artifact each. Of course, among the 10 divine items, some were stronger and some weaker. As long as the champion had enough insight, they would surely pick the strongest artifacts. But there were 10 artifacts in total. The champion could only choose 3, leaving 7 for the others to choose from. Even if the individual runner-up chose first, they could still pick from 6 artifacts, making the runner-up reward almost as good as the champion's. Mei Gongzi's ability to speak was unsealed, but at this moment, she could no longer say anything. Tang San comforted her with his eyes. He understood that Mei Gongzi had just wanted the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor to bless him with fortune. But even if the Master of Destiny had been willing, Tang San wasn't. He understood Mei Gongzi's good intentions, but if a fate link formed between him and the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, it would not be easy to break free from it. Carts were pushed onto the stage. The 10 divine items were to be selected on site, it seemed. Tang San was not worried at all about the competition of insight. Even among all the emperors present, none could compare to his abilities in this regard. What good things had he not seen before? The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor smiled and said, "You can observe these artifacts up close shortly. I will not explain them to you. Only after you have made your choices will I tell you what the artifacts are and their functions." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the red cloths covering the carts quietly disappeared, revealing crystal cases beneath them. Yes, all the items were in crystal cases that perfectly isolated their aura. In other words, they could neither touch nor observe the items with their spiritual sense, so judgment had to be done based on sight alone. Mei Gongzi looked at the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor and couldn't help but say, "Your Majesty, how is the champion advantaged then?" Although they could choose first, without knowing the abilities of the artifacts or sensing their aura, that advantage was greatly diminished. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor smiled and said, "Well, they're not. But here's another thing I haven't told you. Since you're the first in history to win the doubles competition and the first to be twice champion, you will be granted a 3rd divine item. That makes a total of 4 for you and your partner. An extra item? For divine items." Hearing this, Mei Gongzi remained silent. Those were divine items, not cabbages. Even if they had to choose blind, being granted an extra item more than made up for it. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor raised his hand, signaling them to start observing the artifacts. "You have 10 minutes. At this moment, no one would be polite. There were only 5 of them, so they simply walked forward together, starting their observations from different positions. Tang San remained silent throughout, understanding that this selection was indeed very advantageous for them. He and Mei Gongzi would choose 4 artifacts first, then Big Cat would choose 1, and then the other runners-up would pick among the remaining 5. Reaching the first crystal case, Tang San carefully observed the divine item inside. It was something rather peculiar. It looked like a funnel made of metal. It was palm-sized, had no embedded gemstones or anything, and, well, it looked just like an ordinary funnel. With the crystal cover isolating it, he couldn't sense any aura from it, and spiritual power couldn't penetrate the crystal. Divine consciousness might, but he wasn't stupid enough to use it. Having divine consciousness meant being a god, which would naturally cause him, and by extension Mei Gongzi, to be instantly disqualified. After a brief contemplation, Tang San looked at the second divine item. This one appeared even stranger. It looked like a stone, with an amber-like luster and irregular in shape, twisted and contorted as if it had been squeezed and kneaded. Tang San paused for a longer time this time, then moved on to the 3rd divine item. Mei Gongzi followed, also observing carefully, but she realized that her observations weren't yielding much of an insight. At least for the first 2 items, she couldn't make sense of them or guess what they were. Tang San arrived at the 3rd divine item. It was a mirror, round and slightly larger than a palm. Its surface was slightly convex and it appeared to be carved from a special crystal, with a circle of metal around it, engraved with intricate patterns. Among the first 3 items, this one was definitely the most visually appealing. Tang San didn't stay too long and continued to the 4th divine item. At this moment, the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's voice rang out, 8 minutes remain. This reminder was not for Tang San and Mei Gongzi, but for the Scorching Sword pair. As they had been unable to move away from the first item, staring at it with barely concealed excitement. Big Cat was next to them, also eyeing the item with obvious interest. By this time, Tang San had arrived in front of the fourth divine item. Seeing this item, his eyebrows raised slightly. It was yet again something he'd never expected. A book, ancient in appearance and with a dark golden case. The book was full of extremely complex writing, though he was certain that the characters did not belong to any known language on the demon continent. The dark golden surface shimmered brilliantly, making it very eye-catching. This time, Tang San did not leave immediately but stood before the crystal case, carefully observing it as if trying to find some clues. He spent a full 3 minutes before moving on, longer than the time he had spent on the previous items combined. Mei Gongzi, unable to discern the significance of the book, had already moved on, continuing to observe the items ahead. She and Tang San could choose 4 items, so there was a lot of room for selection. Tang San stopped in front of the 5th crystal case. Inside was a saber, its blade crimson and emitting a faint glow. Strangely, the crimson saber appeared to be in a semi-ethereal state, giving a vague and unreal feeling. It also vibrated slightly, as if it was about to break out of the crystal case once it was opened. Tang San pondered briefly. A flicker of a different color appeared in his eyes, and a slight smile on his face. Then, without hesitation, he moved to the next item. The item inside the 6th case looked relatively normal by this point. It was a crystal about the size of a human head. It emitted a purple radiance that filled the crystal case, reflecting and refracting at strange angles. This was probably the ore used to refine amethystine coins. It made sense for a piece this massive to be considered a divine item. It clearly contained immense energy. Tang San had obtained amethystine coins, so it was easy for him to check the energy of this crystal without breaking the rules. He simply took out an amethystine coin from the storage ring he had just acquired and sensed it with his spirit. The amethystine coin was only slightly larger than a fingernail, with no carvings and perfectly round. As Tang San injected his spiritual power into it to sense its energy, his face briefly showed a hint of astonishment, which he quickly replaced with his usual calm expression. He then put the amethystine coin back into the ring and moved on to the 7th case. By now, Big Cat and the scorching sword pair had already moved past them from the other side, continuing to observe the other items. Inside the 7th case was clothing, a pair of gloves, specifically. One was black and one was white. Tang San observed them carefully, even bringing his face close to the crystal case, lingering for a full minute. He was no longer certain if they were just gloves or proper gauntlets. They did not rest flat. Rather, it was as if there were invisible hands inside them, and they looked perfectly three-dimensional. Were they made from a tough material? Yet the 2 gauntlets looked very simple and seemed to be made of leather, with no ethereal glow or anything special about them. Mei Gongzi had seen the gloves before Tang San, but she hadn't noticed anything special about them. Now, she was observing the item inside the 10th case, which the scorching sword pair had looked at excitedly. Tang San moved to the 8th case. Inside was a knife, or rather, a miniature sword, about 7 inches long, crystal clear and emitting a faint golden glow. The small sword floated within the crystal case, its extraordinary nature evident. In terms of appearance, this was easily the best among the 8 items he had seen so far. Tang San only glanced at it briefly before stepping forward to the 9th case. Inside the 9th case was a pair of shoes, yes, shoes, a rarity among divine items. They were a perfect black at first glance, but glowed with a faint purple radiance. As the radiance shifted and rippled, intricate patterns could be seen on the surface of the shoes, clearly indicating their extraordinary nature. Tang San thought for a moment, then continued walking until he stood beside Mei Gongzi. Seeing him approach, Mei Gongzi said, "Take a look at this." Looking at the item inside the 10th case, a glint of realization flashed in Tang San's eyes. This item was quite easy to recognize, and he immediately understood what it was. No wonder the scorching sword pair were so excited. Inside the case was something that looked like a spike. It glowed with a subdued light, a chilling glow that made one's hair stand on end. Around it, strands of invisible energy seemed to weave and intersect. What was this energy? Sword intent, incredibly sharp sword intent. And this spike-like object? It was a beak, the beak of a red-crowned crane. Tang San didn't know why this beak was in the hands of the ancestral court, but clearly, this must have been left by the ancestors of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. A beak being a divine item indicated that it once belonged to a god, and for it to be presented, it was even likely that it originated from a demon emperor. So why was this item not in the hands of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor? If this item fell into the hands of the scorching sword pair, it would undoubtedly be of immense help to the red-crowned crane. Tang San smiled. What a treasure, truly a treasure. The ancestral court must have prepared this item specifically for those two. Having examined all 10 items, Tang San was confident. All 10 were extraordinary, but they varied in level. Different items had different functions and suitability was key. Naturally, there was also the matter of value. One high-value item could easily be worth 2 of the lesser ones. Mei Gongzi came to Tang San's side and asked softly, "How should we choose? Do you have any particular favorites?" Mei Gongzi shook her head. "Besides the amethyst stone and that beak, I can't tell what the others do. How can we choose?" "Shall I choose then?" "Humph. Why do you always seem like you know what you're doing, even when you're in front of something new?" In spite of her words, Mei Gongzi was clearly confident in Tang San's knowledge. Such matters were best left to him. Tang San nodded at her, indicating she could rest assured. While they chatted, Big Cat and the other two were still observing. Big Cat finished first. Seeing that Tang San and Mei Gongzi had already finished, he hurriedly walked over and asked Tang San in a low voice, "What should I choose later?" Tang San's lips moved slightly as he transmitted a few words to Big Cat. Big Cat understood immediately, smiling broadly and giving him a thumbs up. At this moment, Big Cat's mood was absolutely great. He had already gotten the God-slaying sword, and now he was about to get yet another divine item. How could he have ever expected that before coming to the ancestral court? Moreover, with only Tang San and Mei Gongzi choosing before him, Big Cat was completely confident that if there were an item suitable for him, Tang San and Mei Gongzi would not take it for themselves. After all, they were on the same side. "Time's up," the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor announced. The Scorching Sword pair had also finished their observations and returned to stand beside Tang San and Mei Gongzi, waiting. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor said, "You have all observed the 10 divine items. Now let's begin the selection. Mei Gongzi, you choose the first one." As the absolute champion, Mei Gongzi had the first pick. And the second, and even the third. Mei Gongzi looked at Tang San, who whispered something to her. She immediately stepped forward to the 10th case. Under the shocked gaze of the Scorching Sword pair, she said to the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, "I want this one. I use a sword, and this is very suitable for me." The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor was slightly surprised and said in a deep voice, "Are you sure about your choice? Once you choose, you cannot change your mind." "Yes, I'm sure." Mei Gongzi didn't quite understand why Tang San was asking her to choose this one. After all, it was not particularly useful for them, but it was easily the best choice for the Scorching Sword pair. By selecting it, they would unquestionably offend the Red-Crowned Crane clan led by the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. Even so, she still followed Tang San's advice without question and chose the item. The Red-Crowned Crane opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but ultimately didn't. It was the champion's right to choose first. As the crystal case opened, a terrifying sword intent, as keen as a razor, shot skyward. Mei Gongzi waited momentarily until the sword intent dissipated, then stored the black beak into her storage bracelet. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor said, "You should be able to tell that this beak comes from a red-crowned crane. It was left in the ancestral court by the Sword Saint Demon Emperor from 2 generations ago. That ancestor exchanged it for a precious treasure to ensure his successor could ascend to the throne. He also promised to redeem it for twice its value. Well, until now." This statement was essentially implying that the Red-Crowned Crane clan was quite poor and had not accumulated enough resources over the years to redeem this divine item. For this beak to appear in the selection of divine items, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor must have made efforts and promises to the ancestral court. Yet unexpectedly, Mei Gongzi was the one to choose it. The reason it was brought out was that the Sword Saint Demon Emperor hoped his successor would win the championship and choose it first. Moreover, this beak was clearly less significant to other races than it was to the Red-Crowned Cranes. Taking it would undoubtedly invite resentment. However, Azura had Mei Gongzi choose this beak. The reason was unclear, but one thing was certain. This item being in the vaults of the ancestral court was an entirely different thing from it being in the hands of others. Now, please choose the second and third divine items, together with Azura. Regardless of their choices, the selection of divine items had to continue. Tang San walked to Mei Gongzi's side and stood with her. First, he indicated for Mei Gongzi to pick the item inside the 5th case, the crimson saber that appeared somewhat ethereal. Then he himself went to the 4th case and chose the dark golden book. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor was somewhat surprised and said, "I didn't expect you to choose this way. The Holy Blaze Saber is a good item, a rare spirit-type weapon. It can be integrated into one sea of consciousness and, after the birth of divine consciousness, into the divine consciousness itself, and it specializes in cutting through the opponent's spiritual power. However, its overall energy is the lowest among these 10 divine items." Mei Gongzi looked somewhat stunned at Tang San, but Tang San still nodded at her. Mei Gongzi nodded to the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, indicating that she wanted this item. Since Tang San had asked her to choose this item, it had to be suitable. What for? She didn't know, but she fully trusted Tang San to know. Upon hearing the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's explanation, Big Cat also frowned. It seemed that the items chosen by Tang San and Mei Gongzi were not particularly useful. Could it be that Tang San was mistaken? The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor looked at Tang San again and said in a deep voice, "The item you chose is excellent. I thought you would overlook it. Among all 10 divine items, if I had to choose, I would choose this one. The Tome of Duplicates. It is named thus because it allows you to record and use others' bloodline abilities. Unfortunately, it is an imperfect artifact, so the abilities are not as strong as the originals. There's only one Crystal Demon Emperor, that's for sure. But it doesn't really come with any drawbacks and the abilities can be used at practically no cost. So it's actually a very good item." 1. This should have been great news, but Tang San showed no emotional change. He simply took the Tome of Duplicates and said nothing. The dark golden cover of the book emitted a gentle glow. It was not particularly bright, but it gave off a peculiar feeling. Now that he was holding it, Tang San's demeanor seemed to change slightly. Next was the selection of the 4th divine item, which was the additional reward for Tang San and Mei Gongzi. Without hesitation, Tang San chose the 6th item, the enormous purple crystal. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor looked surprised and said, "Compared to other choices, this one seems rather unwise to me. You may have guessed that this is the raw material for amethystin coins, but the coins are only useful for cultivation at the god level and above. They are of little use to you now. Can you tell me why you chose this?" Tang San said, "Because I don't know the functions of all 10 divine items. This one is the only one that gives me some certainty. Instead of guessing about the uncertain ones, it's better to choose something I know I want." A hint of disappointment flashed in the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's eyes. He nodded and signaled to Big Cat. "You can make your selection now." Big Cat stepped forward, glanced at Tang San, and hesitated slightly. He didn't know how to choose, but Tang San had already told him which item to pick. However, based on the 4 items Tang San and Mei Gongzi had chosen, they didn't seem particularly impressive. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor certainly wouldn't lie, would he? Aside from the Tome of Duplicates, which the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor praised, Tang San and Mei Gongzi had chosen the beak, the Holy Blaze Saber, and the piece of amethyst. The latter 3 seemed far too ordinary, but his hesitation didn't last long. Seeing Tang San's calm expression, he gritted his teeth and walked to the mirror-like item. Once taken out of the case, the mirror didn't seem to change much. It shimmered with a faint glow and felt warm to the touch. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor said, "This is a good choice, very suitable for you. This is the heart-protecting divine mirror, suitable for embedding in any armor. It can generate strong protective power, protecting the heart in particular. Moreover, besides physical defense, it also guards the mind against external interference and internal demons alike." Hearing the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's praise, Big Cat had no more misgivings and happily put away the heart-protecting divine mirror. 1. This paragraph has been almost entirely rewritten and does not reflect the original. The decision was made based on information from future chapters, where it is made clear that the use of the book is in fact completely different from what is originally explained here. The current explanation reflects future appearances of the book. Given the information to date, it is fairly clear that it's not the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor making a mistake or an intentional plot device, but rather an error on the author's part. Then it was the turn of the gloomy-faced Scorching Sword pair to choose. To everyone's surprise, the red-crowned crane demon walked up to Mei Gongzi and said in a deep voice, "We have 2 selection slots. If there's something you want to choose, you can tell me. I can exchange 2 divine items for the red-crowned divine sword you have obtained." The red-crowned divine sword was obviously the beak of the ancestor sword Saint Demon Emperor. Mei Gongzi was stunned, and her beautiful eyes revealed a look of realization. She turned to look at Tang San, her eyes full of admiration, exchanging 1 for 2, turning 4 items into 5. This was obviously the smartest choice. No wonder Tang San had her choose this way. However, to Mei Gongzi's surprise, when she looked at Tang San, she saw him shaking his head. Not exchanging 1 for 2. This made no sense. The red-crowned divine sword was indeed not very useful to them, far less effective than it would be when used by the red-crowned crane, and it wasn't like the latter was their enemy. The face of the red-crowned crane instantly turned grim. "Make your selections," came the voice of the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor. In front of this ancestral court ruler, no matter how much resentment the red-crowned crane felt, he couldn't express it now. He and his Scorching Sunflower partner stepped forward together, choosing the brilliant small sword and the funnel from the first case respectively. That is the Primal Chaos funnel, known for having the largest space among all storage items. In terms of actual value, it is actually the crown jewel of all 10 divine items this time. Not only does it have a huge capacity, but also has the ability to absorb the opponent's spiritual power and divine consciousness during battle, greatly affecting the opponent's performance. This is one of the most treasured items of the Ancestral Court, and the highest reward for this competition. The sword is the Holy Light Divine Sword, from the distant Holy Clear Sea. It's an item passed down by the Holy Light clan. It should be obvious from the name that it is a light attribute item, and most suitable for beings with a similar attribute. It matches well with the Scorching Sunflower clan, and when you use it, your flame will be imbued with that holy light. Your choices are very good. Alright, since you have all made your choices, today's award ceremony concludes here. The Ancestral Court Elite Tournament is now complete. The announcement from the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor signaled the successful conclusion of this tournament. The remaining 4 divine items disappeared with a wave of the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's hand, and he vanished simultaneously. Mei Gongzi looked at Tang San, who pulled her along towards the 2 contestants of the Scorching Sword pair. The red-crowned crane looked at Tang San and Mei Gongzi with an icy gaze as they approached. You did this on purpose. I'm not sure why, and it doesn't matter, honestly. If you are willing now, I can still exchange the 2 items we got for the red-crowned divine sword. You must have heard the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's explanation. Both of these items are very powerful, especially the Primal Chaos funnel. Tang San silently shook his head and said, Before coming to the competition, I climbed the Sword Saint Palace and received guidance from the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. I am grateful for that. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor then gave me the Sword Saint Order. We chose this red-crowned divine sword not for profit, but to give something back to the Sword Saint Palace. As he spoke, he took the red-crowned divine sword from Mei Gongzi and handed it to the red-crowned crane. Please deliver this item to His Majesty on my behalf. This is the Peacock Demon Clan's token of respect for the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. The red-crowned crane stared at Tang San, utterly bewildered. Not exchanging it for 2 excellent items but instead gifting it to the Sword Saint Palace? What the hell was this man thinking? After a moment of hesitation, he asked, What do you want? Tang San shook his head once more. Nothing. Just relay my exact words to His Majesty. The red-crowned crane looked at Tang San, then at the red-crowned divine sword. Finally, he accepted the sword. This divine sword was too important for the Sword Saint Palace and for him personally. It was even the key to becoming a demon emperor in the future. That was why he was willing to exchange not 1, but 2 powerful items for it. Yet, Azura and the Peacock Princess didn't want anything in return and just gave it to him. What a turn of events. The resentment almost instantly vanished, and the red-crowned crane asked, How about we give you 1 item? Tang San smiled and said, No need, no need. This is our Peacock Demon Clan's gesture of friendship. We are all from the avian demon lineage, so there's no need to be polite. Anyway, we need to leave quickly, or the spectators will swarm us. Let's go. With that, he motioned for Big Cat to come to their side. After nodding to the red-crowned crane and the Scorching Sunflower, Mei Gongzi initiated teleportation, transforming all 3 of them into a beam of silver light and disappearing into thin air. Looking at the red-crowned divine sword in his hand, the red-crowned crane couldn't help but feel bewildered. Are there really such good people in this world? How could anyone give away such an important item just like that? The red-crowned divine sword might not mean much to other races, but for the red-crowned crane clan, it was a foundational divine item. Moreover, they'd kept the other 2 items, one of which was the top reward. For some reason, even though they'd lost the championship, he felt that he and his partner were the biggest winners of the competition. Stop thinking about it, just go back and give it to His Majesty. The Scorching Sunflower said gently. We didn't even introduce ourselves. I swear, some people. The red-crowned crane stomped his foot, feeling a mix of emotions. Meanwhile, with a flash of silver light, Tang San and his group reappeared outside the Ancestral Court Plaza. Big Cat couldn't help but look at him weirdly. You just gave it away? Why didn't you take the items? Tang San replied, Because I have a very strong desire to keep living. Compared to the items, the friendship of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor is more important. Big Cat, let's part ways here. I look forward to your breakthrough. Big Cat wouldn't be leaving the Ancestral Court for now. He would be advancing toward the god level with the help of the Golden Lion King. Now he had 2 divine items, and with the full support of the lion race, a breakthrough was imminent. And given the tier and power of his bloodline, once he did break through, he would immediately be able to obliterate other gods in a fight. Big Cat nodded at him and said, All right, let's stay in touch. Once I complete my breakthrough here, I'll come to Kali City to find you. In front of Mei Gongzi, he didn't mention the name Golden Valley. After bidding farewell to Tang San and Mei Gongzi, he left immediately. Big brother, we need to leave the ancestral court quickly. From what the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor hinted, it seems the ancestral court intends to act against us. We can't stay. A sense of impending crisis had lingered in Mei Gongzi's mind since the awards ceremony. If someone else had spoken of such a crisis, she would have dismissed it as mere drivel. As the heir to the celestial plume, she had the ability to see the future, and if there was danger, she would sense it to some extent. But the one speaking was the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, the Master of Destiny. They couldn't afford not to believe him. Tang San calmly said, "Don't panic. We definitely need to leave. But since it's a calamity on that level, trying to avoid it might not be feasible. Let's return to the hotel first and make use of the items we've obtained before we leave." As they spoke, a flash of silver light appeared, and the Peacock Great Demon King was suddenly beside them. He said in a deep voice, "Follow me immediately. The competition is over, and we must leave quickly to avoid any action from the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor. We need to hurry and leave." Tang San replied, "City Lord, we can't rush. Whoever intends to harm us must have guessed that we would leave immediately. Do you think they are not prepared for it? With that in mind, we mustn't be hasty. In the ancestral court, even a demon emperor must think twice before acting. We should make use of the items we've just obtained first. It will make our next steps easier." The Peacock Great Demon King looked at him in surprise. Tang San nodded to him and said, "Please trust me. I wouldn't gamble with my own life or little Mei's life. All right, let's return to your hotel first." A flash of silver light enveloped them, and they disappeared. When they reappeared, they were in Tang San's room at the White Tiger Hotel. This precise long-distance teleportation fully demonstrated the Peacock Great Demon King's power, something Mei Gongzi couldn't achieve yet. Tang San nodded to the Peacock Great Demon King. "Please guard us." "All right." The Peacock Great Demon King, having experienced countless situations, had calmed down by now. Tang San led Mei Gongzi directly into the cultivation room, indicating for her to sit cross-legged opposite him, facing each other. Tang San said, "First, calm your mind. We left through teleportation. In terms of manipulating space, not even the ancestral court has someone better than your father. So, to those who want to harm us, we have disappeared without a trace. Actually, if we just wanted to save our lives, we could find a sacred mountain close to us to depend on. But doing so would mean you could never inherit the position of the Peacock Demon Clan leader. To become the leader of the clan, you can't depend on any emperor, because you are destined to become an emperor yourself."
Mei Gongzi silently nodded.
This was also why she wanted to leave immediately. Leaving the ancestral court means we might be hunted, but now everyone has lost our trail. They will think we've fled and will pursue us immediately. This time gap works to our advantage. So first, stabilize your mind, and let's make use of these two items. As he spoke, Tang San took out the enormous amethyst crystal and motioned for Mei Gongzi to take out the Holy Blaze Saber. Under the influence of Tang San's calm demeanor, Mei Gongzi's anxious mind gradually stabilized. She looked at Tang San and said, "Big brother, you promised to show me your true face after today's competition. Don't forget." Tang San replied, "Let's do this first, all right? I don't want my appearance to affect your mood right now." Mei Gongzi did not insist at this moment and just nodded silently. Tang San pointed to the Holy Blaze Saber in front of her and said, "The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's explanations for the divine items were all accurate. This Holy Blaze Saber was indeed the lowest level among them. It barely qualifies as a divine item. But that's not relevant. What matters is whether you're able to use its powers to do something meaningful. Otherwise, even the best divine weapon is nothing but a wall hanger. This Holy Blaze Saber is actually the most suitable for you among all those items. It can directly integrate into your sea of consciousness, significantly enhancing your spiritual power while transforming it, allowing you to develop some divine consciousness even before you achieve godhood. Remember the divine item we used to defeat Meng Didi? That is a transcendent divine item, one that you will truly need to master in the future. The other function of the Holy Blaze Saber is to strengthen your connection with that sword, allowing it to come to you faster and enabling you to borrow some of its power. With the Holy Blaze Saber guarding your sea of consciousness, it will greatly benefit you when you break through to godhood. This is why I chose it. Although it is not an especially powerful divine item, it is perfectly suitable for you." Mei Gongzi believed him, but she immediately wanted to ask why Tang San had such an accurate understanding of the Holy Blaze Saber's functions. He couldn't have seen it before, could he? But before she could ask, Tang San continued, "Concentrate. Use your spiritual power to guide the holy blaze saber, and then drop a tear onto the blade. A strange expression appeared on Mei Gongzi's pretty face. What? Not blood, but tears? You want me to cry? Tang San helplessly said. Just imagine we are being attacked. I am seriously injured, and I am about to die. Don't say that. Mei Gongzi instantly raised her hand to cover Tang San's mouth, but the next moment, her face turned red, and she withdrew her hand. I really can't cry, she said with a distressed expression. Tang San pondered momentarily and said, Let me tell you a story. What? Mei Gongzi looked at him in surprise. Once upon a time, there were a boy and a girl who grew up together, like siblings but without being actual siblings. The boy would comb the girl's long hair, and whenever she was in danger, he would always step forward to protect her. He guarded her every moment as she grew up. As they grew older, they gradually realized that their feelings for each other were no longer those between a brother and sister. It was the love between a man and a woman. And as it turned out, the girl was actually an old rabbit demon who had cultivated into human form. To truly become human, she needed a bloodline transformation, which would be complete once she reached a certain level of power. Once that happened, she could be together with the boy. They went through many years together, their strength growing continuously, and their love deepening. But the enemies they faced were formidable. Finally, in a confrontation with powerful foes, they were surrounded. At that time, the girl was just one step away from completing her transformation. But the enemies they encountered were too strong, to the point where the boy could no longer hold on. At the last moment, the boy sacrificed his life to protect the girl, urging her to escape. But the girl didn't leave. At that moment, she burned her own life force, turning into a part of the boy's body. She completely destroyed her millennia of cultivation to become his strength, sacrificing herself for him. At that moment, what was in her mind was the boy's promise to her that anyone who wanted to harm her would have to step over his dead body. Looking at him, the girl thought in her final moments that he had protected her all his life, and now she was willing to use everything she had to protect him. Because he loved her more than life itself, and she loved him no less. A crystalline tear formed, silently falling onto the blazing holy blaze saber. Mei Gongzi opened her mouth, about to say something, when the holy blaze saber in front of her suddenly shone brightly, illuminating the entire cultivation room with its radiant light. Amid the dazzling light, Mei Gongzi clearly saw that the eyes of the young man sitting opposite her were also filled with tears. Boom! A surge of scorching warmth instantly rushed into Mei Gongzi's sea of consciousness. At this moment, her heart was filled with emotion. Tang San's voice came to her ears. Embrace the source, focus your mind, and remain calm. Hold true to your heart. The fiery energy surged into her sea of consciousness, making Mei Gongzi feel as if her entire sea of consciousness was burning, boiling, and surging violently. Yet strangely, there was no pain. Instead, the intense heat brought a comforting sensation, making her sea of consciousness expand rapidly yet feel more stable than ever. Using tears to bond with a divine item. This was something only Tang San dared to suggest. Not even an emperor, not even the master of destiny himself, could fathom such a method. Tears are the flow of the soul, the expression of the spirit, the deepest sincerity within. And as Mei Gongzi's tears were filled with emotion, the holy blaze saber received that same emotion. The tears, imbued with her pure heart and kind nature, carried all the most beautiful aspects of her being. Therefore, the holy blaze saber recognized its master so swiftly and directly it was unbelievable. It integrated itself into Mei Gongzi's sea of consciousness, allowing her to fully merge with it immediately. Mei Gongzi's spiritual power continued to surge, and as it surged, it was rapidly compressed under the influence of the holy blaze saber. This newly integrated divine weapon directly became the guardian of her sea of consciousness, continuously elevating and enhancing her spiritual power. This was no longer just a weapon for battle. More importantly, it was an aid to her sea of consciousness, a part of her spirit. Even though it was a divine item of the lowest tier, the transformation it brought about by fully integrating into her body with no resistance was enormous. Mei Gongzi's spirit core began to undergo a transformation, and some divine consciousness started to emerge. With the eyes of her consciousness, she saw a faint red glow flickering within her spirit core. This was the first time she had noticed it. That faint red glow seemed to sense the transformation of her spiritual power, becoming noticeably brighter. The holy blaze saber seemed to sense the aura of that faint red glow and quivered for a moment. In the next instant, it became even more stable and then transformed into a vast red light that filled the sea of consciousness, all rushing toward the spirit core as if it had found its destiny, like rivers converging into the sea. Tang San quietly placed his right hand on Mei Gongzi's forehead, silently sensing her changes, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Tears of emotion were indeed the best way to let such a spiritual divine weapon recognize its master, and the effect was even better than he had expected. One by one, amethystine coins silently floated up, hovering around Mei Gongzi and emitting a faint purple halo. Outside, the Peacock Great Demon King was maintaining a spatial barrier that isolated the room from the outside world. At this moment, he too sensed something and cast his gaze toward the cultivation room, only to see at least 50 amethystine coins floating in the air. The corners of the Peacock Great Demon King's mouth twitched. Even though he controlled the extremely wealthy Etherhorn Merchant Association, he would never be willing to use so many amethystine coins for cultivation. The reason amethystine coins were so precious was that they were used to nurture divine consciousness. Yes, divine consciousness. Therefore, only God-level experts found it meaningful to use amethystine coins for cultivation. But the production of amethystine coins was so low that very few could actually afford to use them for cultivation. Even emperors were the same. For example, one of the poorest emperors, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor, would never be willing to use amethystine coins for cultivation. Most of his allocation from the ancestral court went to support the red-crowned cranes. The red-crowned cranes were almost all martial fanatics and were not skilled in business. It was normal for them to be poor. Otherwise, how would they have been unable to redeem the red-crested divine sword after so many years? This time, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor had put in great effort to get the ancestral court to offer the red-crested divine sword as a reward, only to have it snatched away by Tang San. And even among the emperors that could afford it, nobody would use more than 10 amethystine coins at a time, and they wouldn't do that every day. Who would use 50 amethystine coins to help others cultivate? Wait, those are for nurturing divine consciousness. Could it be that? The Peacock Great Demon King's perception of Tang San changed further. What was the origin of this human? Could the Redemption Society really cultivate such a being? If the Redemption Society could really produce a few more like him, humanity might truly rise. Allowing the Redemption Society to operate in Kali City, was it really good for the demon race? After all, humans were so numerous. Forget it, no need to think so much. Life's short anyway, might as well enjoy the show. My successor even has human blood, so there's no point acting against humans. The amethystine coins emitted a faint purple halo, a strange, ethereal light. The soft purple hue it radiated gave off a very peculiar feeling. This purple light was gentle yet firm, and the radiance it emitted was very peaceful. Silently, it flowed into Mei Gongzi's forehead, being absorbed by her sea of consciousness. Tang San's own eyes also lit up, and purple light flickered within as he absorbed the energy from the amethystine coins in the air. This was a unique energy capable of nurturing divine consciousness. Tang San could clearly feel his divine consciousness in his spirit core being influenced and slowly growing stronger. His spirit core was running at full blast, and it was absorbing the energy with all its might to strengthen his divine consciousness. Facing a potentially deadly danger, he couldn't care less about exposing some of his abilities in front of the Peacock Great Demon King. Tang San's spirit core absorbed the purple energy like a bottomless abyss, at a speed at least 10 times faster than Mei Gongzi's. The amethystine coins floating in the air quickly lost their color, and when their internal energy was completely depleted, they silently turned to dust. Through absorption, Tang San discovered that the energy within the amethystine coins was somewhat similar to the divine spirit energy of the divine realm, but not quite the same. It also contained some strange spiritual fluctuations and will, seemingly related to the planar ruler of this world. It was a very unique and peculiar thing. In any case, this was extremely beneficial to the restoration of his divine consciousness, and it was why Tang San wanted that huge piece of amethystine. No divine weapon could compare to the benefits of strengthening his own divine consciousness. After absorbing the Wind Dragon bloodline, which caused his body to evolve again, his endurance also increased. Although he had not yet become a god, the restoration of his divine consciousness had been going somewhat faster. However, it was only somewhat. He lacked a direct source to replenish his divine consciousness, and he was relying only on the conversion of spiritual power. This was something that could not be done directly, and neither could it be sped up. The conversion rate from spiritual power to divine consciousness was extremely low, so even though his spiritual power was immense and its cultivation was fast, his divine consciousness could only recover slowly. Now, the amethystine coins provided the nutrients most needed by his divine consciousness. The more Tang San's divine consciousness recovered, the more memories and abilities from his past life would be restored. And although his body was not at the god level yet, during the process of absorbing the amethystine coin's energy, he was invisibly restoring his god king level divine consciousness. The amethystine coins were rapidly consumed. In just 2 hours, the 200 coins were no more. 90% of the energy had been absorbed by Tang San, while Mei Gongzi, who was still merging with the Holy Blaze Saber, only consumed 10%. Of this energy, most was devoured by the red glow in her spirit core. Damn, these amethystine coins are truly wonderful. Tang San took a deep breath, feeling the divine consciousness in his sea of consciousness grow more than twice its original size, and couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Of course, he also understood that the value of the amethystine coins he had absorbed could probably afford him a divine item or two. He just had to figure out where the ancestral court's amethystine mines were located, or at least where they created these coins. Due to the changes in his divine consciousness, Tang San's divine sense was also significantly elevated, and he was now vaguely sensing many things he couldn't perceive before. But looking at the huge amethystine crystal in front of him, Tang San decided to refrain for now. After all, he was not yet at the god level. No matter how massive his sea of consciousness was or how well he could control it, he couldn't allow his divine consciousness to grow too strong before he became a god. That would lead to the collapse of his sea of consciousness. His divine consciousness was right now at the strongest level he could contain within his sea of consciousness before breaking through. Focusing on his divine consciousness, Tang San silently felt the changes it had undergone. His sea of consciousness rippled quietly, and he immersed himself in meditation, delving into the memories from his past life. During her cultivation, Mei Gongzi's spiritual perception was exceptionally clear. She could clearly feel the expansion of her sea of consciousness. It was only now that she understood that before reaching the god level, one could enhance their sea of consciousness to such an extent. No wonder Azura is so powerful. His spiritual power must have already reached this level. So he's had divine consciousness for a while already? Under the infusion of the Holy Blaze Saber, her spirit core was continuously undergoing qualitative changes, becoming entirely different from before. At the center of her spirit core, even the last trace of the Holy Blaze Saber's light had disappeared. What had appeared instead was a small red sword standing upright, tipped down. At first, it was just a faint shadow, but as the Holy Blaze Saber integrated and supplemented it with a large amount of energy, the shadow gradually became clearer, transforming into this blood-red small sword. And from that moment, this small sword was the center of her sea of consciousness. When Mei Gongzi's consciousness infused into the small sword, she could vaguely sense that in a distant place, there seemed to be an extremely terrifying existence resonating with the aura of the small red sword. Yet within that terrifying aura, she could sense great gentleness and closeness towards her. And it seemed that through the small red sword, she had established a connection with it. That should be the so-called transcendent divine weapon Azura mentioned. He is truly an extraordinary person. How could he know so many things and possess so many magical abilities? And I've never even heard of a transcendent divine weapon. So how could he possess one, much less give it to me? It was at times that she had to remind herself about the blood oath. Otherwise, how could she not have doubts about him? But with the abilities he'd shown, it made no sense for him to go through all that just to harm her. So she believed in him. Since coming to the ancestral court and being with him, her cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. Mei Gongzi even felt that breaking through to god level was no problem for her now. Although her bloodline cultivation hadn't reached the peak of the 9th order, her spiritual power was incredibly strong, enough to compensate for the lack of bloodline power. But it was not the time yet. Azura had once told her to compress her power as much as possible and delay the tribulation in order to gain the greatest benefits. Mei Gongzi remembered this very well and would certainly follow his advice. And she had to see what his true face looked like.
Mei Gongzi
Unconsciously thought of the moment in the final match when he held her hand and drew that arc. That was the true essence of the mysterious circles of heaven. She thought she had a good grasp of the technique, but it was only now that she began to possess divine consciousness that she truly understood. At that time, Azura must have used a trace of divine consciousness to activate the technique. He already possessed divine consciousness long ago. He was definitely stronger than she had imagined. She unconsciously recalled the scene when she was acknowledged by the celestial plume. She was high above, attracting everyone's attention, and he was right by her side. Big brother, why are you so good to me? And what about that story just now? What happened to the boy and the girl? The sky gradually darkened. The award ceremony had ended before noon, yet Tang San and Mei Gongzi were still there, cultivating until dusk. The Peacock Great Demon King had been waiting outside for them. He had plenty of time to meditate and think up strategies, and he realized that Tang San's approach was correct. Leaving immediately would only make them a clear target. This buffer would surely confuse their opponents. Although the divine consciousness of emperors was extremely powerful, There were so many emperors in the ancestral court that they could not recklessly use their divine consciousness to scan places randomly. But after so much time had passed without any clues, they would surely guess that he and his group had not left the ancestral court but were still within it. And once that happened, even if they wanted to leave, they would face an inescapable net. The only uncertainty was how many enemies they would have to face. As various strategies ran through his mind, the energy fluctuations from the direction of the cultivation room silently disappeared. He turned his head to look, and saw that the light filling the cultivation room was no more. Tang San and Mei Gongzi walked out of the cultivation room together. For some reason, when the Peacock Great Demon King saw them again, he clearly felt that they had both changed somewhat. Especially his daughter. Her eyes had a faint, strange red glow flickering deep within them. That red glow gave him a slightly unsettling feeling. Tang San nodded slightly to the Peacock Great Demon King and said, "City Lord, we can prepare to leave." The Peacock Great Demon King nodded back. "Do you have any ideas? Please have someone from the Etherhorn Merchant Association bring some items. I can set up an array to greatly enhance your spatial transmission ability. We'll aim to teleport a great distance in one go and then continue from there. If we can break through the encirclement in this way, that would be the best outcome." The Peacock Great Demon King nodded and said, "All right, what do you need?" Tang San wrote down a list, and the Peacock Great Demon King immediately contacted the Etherhorn Merchant Association to handle it. Tang San asked Mei Gongzi to rest aside while he cleared a space in the living room and began using his bloodline power to draw on it. Silver light merged into the floor, outlining strange patterns. When the Peacock Great Demon King returned after instructing the Etherhorn Merchant Association, he immediately saw the lines Tang San was drawing, and he noticed that the power being used was clearly the bloodline power of the Peacock Demon Clan. Looking at Tang San, the Peacock Great Demon King's expression turned somewhat peculiar. Although he had already seen some questionable things, seeing the young human use the Peacock Demon Clan's space attribute bloodline power without any reservations still gave him a strange feeling. How can he do this? There are others with multiple bloodlines, but this is something else altogether. Whether it's the Lion Tiger, Golden Rock, or Peacock Demon, each of these is a powerful bloodline. How can he possibly use them? And does he have other bloodlines as well? Now was not the time to ask, however, so the Peacock Great Demon King kept his questions to himself. He just sat quietly aside, watching, and the more he watched, the more surprise filled his eyes. Although he couldn't fully understand the intricacies of the array Azura was drawing, he could tell that it was an extremely complex teleportation array that drew upon the Peacock Demon bloodline power specifically. He could sense his power reacting to it, and as he watched, he even felt that his understanding of spatial attributes was growing deeper. In other words, the array created by this young man had not just tactical value, but educational value to the Peacock Great Demon King. What did this entail? It entailed that this array surpassed his understanding of spatial power. How is this possible? The Peacock Great Demon King's expression grew increasingly complex as he looked at Azura. Even though his assessment of Azura had been quite high to begin with, he now realized he still didn't understand enough. Azura was even stronger than he had judged. Mei Gongzi was also watching intently, silently feeling the changes in her sea of consciousness, adapting to the presence of divine consciousness. A hint of confusion marred her expression. Whenever she infused her consciousness into the small red sword that was generating divine consciousness, she could vaguely see fragmentary images. They weren't clear, and she couldn't tell what was going on with them, yet she could faintly sense that these images were related to her. As she looked at them, she felt the impact they had on her spirit. Mei Gongzi was intently watching the lines Tang San was drawing. Tang San shook his head. "No, this is a one-time teleportation array. It will be destroyed after we teleport away. Even if the ones intercepting us are emperors, at most, they can use their divine consciousness to observe the surroundings of the ancestral court. They might be able to detect our departure, but it's simply impossible for them to stop it. At most, they can chase us as soon as they discover it. And if we teleport far enough, breaking through their blockade will become easier." The Peacock Great Demon King took a deep breath, somewhat relieved. But then, his line of questioning continued in another direction. "Is it possible to make it permanent?" Tang San replied, "I need to do some research to find the optimal arrangement, and of course it will require more materials. Each teleportation consumes a lot of energy, after all. But suppose we have sufficient materials in the future, plus enough space to set up an ultra-large teleportation array. In that case, it's not impossible to teleport directly from Kali City to the ancestral court." The Peacock Great Demon King felt as if his understanding was being overturned. As the absolute master of space in this generation and the leader of the Peacock Demon Clan, he most definitely could not achieve this, and he was quite certain that even his ancestor, the Peacock Demon Emperor, could not. The knowledge of space that the young man before him displayed far exceeded what the Peacock Demon clan had. Although I don't know how you obtained the bloodline power of our Peacock Demon clan, if we can return safely, I will grant you a position within our clan. I hope you can. Tang San cut him off. I need to set up the formations core. Thank you, City Lord, but I really don't need any position. Being Little May's personal guard is enough for me. As he spoke, he threw out 6 gems, each landing at one of the array's 6 corners. Immediately, the previously misty silver light surged brightly, turning the entire room into a sea of silver. Enter the array, Tang San said in a deep voice. The Peacock Great Demon King and Mei Gongzi quickly stepped into the array. Tang San had the Peacock Great Demon King stand at the center of the array and said to them, "In a moment, we will infuse the array with our bloodline power together. As I said, this is a single-use array. I set the direction, but the distance we can teleport depends on how much bloodline power we infuse. Ideally, we shift across 2 or maybe even 3 main cities." The Peacock Great Demon King's eyes widened. Teleporting across 3 main cities meant they could directly cover 1/3 of the distance from the Ancestral Court to Kali City. Never in his life had he ever heard of something like that. Even a master of space like himself, giving it his all, would need 15 to 20 leaps to reach Kali City, and he would have to rest and recover in between. Teleporting 1/3 of the way in one go would definitely be beyond all their opponents' expectations. They infused the array with their bloodline power following Tang San's instructions. Instantly, the silver light on the array surged, growing intensely. A terrifying silver halo expanded in the air, almost instantly breaking through the barrier previously set by the Peacock Great Demon King. The silver light shot up from the White Tiger Hotel, piercing the sky. Before a giant statue on a peak of the ancestral mountains surrounding the Ancestral Court, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor stood quietly, with his eyes closed. At the moment the silver light erupted within the city, his eyes opened, his already released divine consciousness suddenly intensified, and a trace of a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Found them, but in the next moment, his cold expression turned to astonishment. The silver light flashed and vanished instantly. He could clearly feel something piercing through his divine consciousness, then crossing space and disappearing in a flash. Although he could tell the direction in which the other party had left, the teleportation seemed almost infinite. How could this be possible? How far have they teleported? Nobody understood the Peacock Great Demon King's abilities better than his old enemy, and he was naturally aware that the Peacock Great Demon King couldn't possibly teleport this far. But the facts were right before him, and reality was as it was. They had disappeared, shifting instantly beyond his divine consciousness's perception range. The entire Ancestral Court was alarmed. Almost immediately, a figure appeared in the sky above the White Tiger Hotel. A fierce killing intent burst forth, enveloping the entire hotel. The divine consciousness probes that followed were all repelled by this killing intent, unable to penetrate further. The White Tiger Demon Emperor hovered coldly in the air, his divine consciousness silently enveloping the White Tiger Hotel, a strange look flashing in his eyes. How was this done? Long-distance teleportation? Since when did the old peacock have such abilities? In the next moment, several figures appeared near him but did not approach. A powerful voice sounded, "White Tiger, what's going on?" "Teleportation, I suppose. It seems like an array, but it was destroyed. Can we take a look?" The White Tiger Demon Emperor's response was immediate and decisive. A fierce killing intent burst forth, intimidating everyone around. Those formidable figures gradually dissipated, each harboring their own thoughts. But there was no doubt that they were all affected by the intense spatial fluctuations earlier. They had never felt such strange spatial fluctuations before. Many things were well known, such as the feud between the Crystal Phoenix clan and the Peacock Demon clan. Since becoming an emperor, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor had been constantly devising ways to target the Peacock Demon clan, with his sights firmly set on Kali City. All the emperors were aware of this, and some even tacitly approved. After all, there were only so many main cities, and only an emperor could be fully certain that their rule would not be disputed by others. This was an unspoken rule. The Peacock Great Demon King bringing his daughter to participate in the Ancestral Court Elite competition was thus unexpected for many demon clans. The battle between the Peacock Great Demon King and the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor in Kali City was no secret, and those who paid attention knew all too well how it had ended. The Peacock Great Demon King had suffered severe injuries and was even on the verge of death, which had caused quite a stir among the upper echelons of the Ancestral Court. After all, the former Peacock Demon Emperor had been the most powerful space element user, and her ability to peer into the secrets of the heavens was not something that could be replicated. Even the Ancestral Court, especially the demon clans of the Empyrean Dominion, did not wish to see such a powerful clan perish. Therefore, some powerful figures had warned the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor to be patient and wait. If the Peacock Great Demon King passed away, action could be taken. At that time, the Peacock Demon Clan would naturally be unable to resist. But no one had expected that the Peacock Great Demon King, who was critically injured and at risk of death, would take a completely different approach and bring his daughter to compete. Everyone understood this was a demonstration to the ancestral court, showcasing his successor. Interestingly enough, this successor was not only not a pure-blooded descendant, but even possessed human blood. What the ancestral court did not expect was that this seemingly delicate girl would blast through walls and ride high waves to attain the championship in both the individual and the doubles competitions. This was the first time the ancestral court elite competition had doubles matches. Naturally, Mei Gongzi was the first double champion, and it didn't take much brainpower to understand that this was much more challenging than winning either of the titles alone. Throughout the tournament, she had no time to rest, facing strong opponents every day and constantly needing to win. Even one mishap or injury-affecting performance could lead to elimination. Yet, under such circumstances, Mei Gongzi had ultimately claimed the double championship crown, becoming the #1 young talent among the demon and nymph races. Such a talent inheriting the celestial plume meant what for the future? It meant that the next leader of the Peacock Demon Clan might well become an emperor once more. The ones most unwilling to see this were the Phoenix race. The Peacocks and Phoenixes had competed for the title of King of the Birds for many years, and the Phoenixes had ultimately won. The Phoenix race had 2 demon emperors right now, an incredible achievement. How could they willingly watch the Peacock Demon Clan rise again? Therefore, the entire ancestral court was instantly in turmoil when Mei Gongzi won her first championship. The ancestral court council decided to sit and wait, though there were undercurrents and changes. Most remained observant, but some had their own ideas. It was fully expected that once the award ceremony was over, a fight would ignite once more. But at that moment, the Peacock Great Demon King, his daughter, and her partner all disappeared together. That was, of course, completely within expectations, only for those expectations to be overturned as those chasing them realized they had not, in fact, left the city. Just as night began to fall, all the strong figures in the ancestral court felt a sudden burst of space energy, the likes of which they had never experienced, leaving everyone astonished. Such intense spatial fluctuations, it was clearly a long-distance teleportation, but what kind of distance was this? How could the Peacock Great Demon King possess such an ability? How did he manage to control that massive amount of energy and the resulting spatial fluctuations without being an emperor? Therefore, many top-tier experts came to the White Tiger Hotel, wanting to see if there were any clues left behind. However, the White Tiger Demon Emperor, filled with fierce killing intent, would not allow anyone to approach. The White Tiger Hotel was his property, and with him guarding it, no one could get close unless they wanted to confront him directly. The unwelcome guests dispersed, and the White Tiger Demon Emperor's eyes flickered. The next moment, he was in the room where Tang San had stayed. Even though the people had left, the room still retained extremely intense spatial fluctuations. Space itself seemed twisted and illusory, though the aftereffects were slowly dissipating. The floor bore burnt marks, as well as a number of items that clearly showed what had been done here. Gems, metals, and crisscrossing lines on the floor, now severely damaged and beyond repair. The Peacock Great Demon King had used the power of an array to teleport away quickly. But when and how did he acquire such an array? The remaining traces showed it was incredibly complex. Even the ancestral court had not mastered such techniques. Silently feeling the changes in the space elemental energy, memorizing the peculiarities of these spatial fluctuations, the White Tiger Demon Emperor narrowed his eyes, showing a contemplative expression. While the ancestral court was shocked by the long-distance teleportation, somewhere extremely far away, intense silver light surged. In the next moment, 3 figures appeared out of nowhere and landed quietly in the middle of the wilderness. The Peacock Great Demon King released spatial power, enveloping Tang San and Mei Gongzi as they floated down. His eyes could not hide his excitement. Because he had the most powerful space manipulation abilities of his time, his feelings were the most profound. During the recent teleportation, he distinctly felt spatial changes he had never experienced before. It was a wonderful process of integrating with space and gently folding it before crossing through the folds rather than using brute force to tear open a channel to the destination. The feeling of merging with space was something he had never experienced before, and it was truly wonderful. He even had some enlightenment from it. After being severely injured, this was the first time he had the thought of wanting to live longer. If he could frequently observe such spatial changes, he might touch that threshold in the near future. Achieving the rank of Demon Emperor by mastering space would be extraordinary. By then, How could the Crystal Phoenix possibly threaten him? However, no matter how he thought about it, it could only be a fleeting thought. He knew very well that he couldn't survive. The injuries sustained after burning his essence had shattered his spirit core and damaged the essence of his bloodline, causing his life essence to continuously drain away. As he turned to look at his daughter, there was even a hint of envy in his eyes. If he had a protector and mentor like Azura back in the day, how could he have fallen to this state? He might have accumulated power and made a name for himself in one fell swoop. City Lord, we need to hurry and continue teleporting. We should return to Kali City as soon as possible. Tang San's voice snapped the Peacock Great Demon King out of his thoughts. He nodded. All right, I'll recover a bit, and then we'll start again. There was no way to set up another teleportation array. It would take too long, giving the opposing forces from the Ancestral Court time to catch up. But he could still teleport with his own power. Although the distance would be shorter, it would still be much faster than flying. Mei Gongzi looked at Tang San and saw the seriousness in his eyes. Remembering what the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor had said before, her heart couldn't help but tighten. Big brother, are you alright? Should I use the Celestial Plume to sense the changes in the future? Mei Gongzi asked. No. Tang San immediately and decisively refused. He would never let Mei Gongzi use the Celestial Plume like that. The backlash was unpredictable even for someone like him, and if a major issue arose, it would be disastrous. After going through so much to find his beloved, he couldn't let her take such a risk. The Peacock Great Demon King calmed his mind and focused on recovering from the earlier consumption, silently sensing their location at the same time. By observing the stars, he could roughly determine their current position and decide the direction for the next teleportation. A quarter of an hour later, the Peacock Great Demon King gathered his strength and said in a deep voice, "Prepare, we are setting off again." The previous long-distance teleportation had taken a significant toll on him, even accelerating the loss of his life essence. But at this moment, there was no time to worry about that. They needed to return to Kali City first. Mei Gongzi's double championship would garner more support in the city, and he had to take them back and firmly establish Mei Gongzi as the new clan leader if he wanted to continue his plans. Huge silver-white wings unfolded from the back of the Peacock Great Demon King. Peacock plumes appeared one by one, transforming into swirling silver light. Dense spatial fluctuations surrounded the three of them, forcibly opening a spatial passage that extended into the distance. Silver light flickered in the Peacock Great Demon King's eyes as he prepared to initiate the teleportation. However, at this moment, a deep voice suddenly echoed. Everything around them suddenly turned black. Even the brilliant silver light of the space element was quietly extinguished at this moment. Everything around them was shrouded in darkness. The light of the stars and moon was obliterated, and endless darkness seemed ready to swallow the three of them, covering everything. The pupils of the Peacock Great Demon King, Tang San, and Mei Gongzi almost simultaneously contracted. The immense pressure and the terrifying aura coming from all directions instantly caused their hearts to sink. There was only one person on the entire demon continent who could do something: the Eternal Night Sovereign, the Tenebrous Demon Emperor. The Peacock Great Demon King never imagined that even after teleporting such a long distance, an enemy would still follow. Even more surprising was that it wasn't their archenemy, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor, but the Tenebrous Demon Emperor. Compared to the 9th-ranked Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor, there was no doubt that the 6th-ranked Tenebrous Demon Emperor was much more terrifying. He was a veteran emperor and a dragon to boot. In terms of both strength and experience, he far surpassed the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor. Moreover, it was nighttime now, and there was a very good reason he was known as the Eternal Night Sovereign. At night, even demon emperors ranked above him might not be able to defeat him. The Peacock Great Demon King took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Is it your majesty, the Tenebrous Demon Emperor? May I ask why you are blocking our way?" The voice of the Tenebrous Demon Emperor came from all directions. "Do you even need to ask? Your daughter ruined my most outstanding successor, cutting off the lineage of the Tenebrous Demon Emperor. Why wouldn't I be blocking your way? Tonight you will die." "Your Majesty, wait a moment." The Peacock Great Demon King called out loudly. "May I ask how you caught up with us? I believe that since we teleported so far, even an emperor shouldn't be able to catch up immediately, unless you already knew our destination. You only say that because you don't understand emperors," the Tenebrous Demon Emperor said calmly. "Every emperor has their own domain, and in that domain they are absolute rulers. Your biggest mistake was choosing to leave during the night. The night belongs to me. In the darkness, your departure and the light you created became the most obvious target. I didn't catch up. You brought me here. You illuminated the night and left shadows, naturally bringing me along. Anyway, no point wasting time here. With your cultivation, even the celestial plume cannot help you against me. As long as it's night, even if you somehow become an emperor in the next 3 seconds, you won't escape my grasp. He followed us using our shadows in the night? I never expected him to be so terrifying. The peacock great demon king couldn't help but gasp. His heart sank to the bottom. With the tenebrous demon emperor here, all their plans had been for naught. Even in Kali City, where he could leverage the city's power, he couldn't resist this one. At that moment, he suddenly saw Azura move to Mei Gongzi's side, shielding her behind him. The surrounding darkness deepened, and the immense pressure from all directions, filled with dense darkness elemental energy, pressed inward, rendering the peacock great demon king's control over space completely useless. The space elemental energy was rapidly extinguished. This was absolute power suppression. Even if the peacock great demon king had been in peak condition, he would have had no chance of fighting back. And not only was he severely injured, but it was nighttime, so the eternal night sovereign was even more powerful than usual. Tang San looked at the peacock great demon king and said in a deep voice, "Prepare for teleportation. I'll break through the night, and you can take us away." The peacock great demon king was stunned. Even he couldn't break through this extinguishing darkness. No matter how extraordinary the young man was, he wasn't even a god yet. How could he achieve this? Then he saw a flash of light in Azura's hand. There was now a small item in it. Azura raised his hand and threw the item into the sky. It was a small and delicate sword that didn't look special in any way. But the next moment, it radiated incredible sharpness. So much so that even looking at it made one's eyes hurt. The sudden sharp aura sliced through the sky, as if intent on tearing the entire world apart. The Sword Saint's token? Humph. Do you think he would act for you? But just as the tenebrous demon emperor's mocking words echoed, a deep voice interrupted him. "Tenebrous, bullying the weak is rather unbecoming of an emperor, don't you feel?" The next moment, the small sword suddenly enlarged, and the already sharp edge became even more astonishingly sharp, cutting through the very fabric of space. In the dark night, it forcibly opened a rift. "Sword Saint, are you seriously opposing me?" The tenebrous demon emperor's angry voice rang out. Seizing the moment of this incredible sword strike, the silver light flashed, and the peacock great demon king instantly teleported away with Tang San and Mei Gongzi. Then a figure emerged from the darkness, indistinct and radiating a faint purple glow. Raising his right hand before his face, he held a small sword between his index and middle fingers. His expression was very grim. A sword strike couldn't be taken casually, even if he was an emperor. Although the Sword Saint Demon Emperor ranked below him, his strength couldn't be measured by mere rankings. What the Tenebrous Demon Emperor didn't understand was why the Sword Saint Demon Emperor would intervene for people who had nothing to do with him, even going as far as to attack him directly. Meanwhile, at the Sword Saint Palace, the Emperor in question opened his eyes. It was as if 2 flashes of cold lightning were reflected in his pupils, and he slowly lowered his hand. If they can survive, they will become absolutely outstanding. What the Tenebrous Demon Emperor couldn't understand was already causing turmoil in Mei Gongzi's heart during the teleportation. At the moment the astonishing sword radiance rose, she finally understood why Azura had said that the friendship of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor was far more important than 1 or even 2 divine weapons. She hadn't expected to get an answer to this question so fast and in such a direct manner. The 2 of them had a total of 4 tokens from the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. If the Sword Saint Demon Emperor was willing to intervene 4 times on account of these tokens, it was indeed worth far more than 2 divine weapons. Forget about 2, even if they had 10 of the greatest divine weapons in hand, they couldn't contend with the Tenebrous Demon Emperor, but the Sword Saint Demon Emperor could. Silver light flickered, and when they reappeared, they were in another location. Due to haste, the Peacock Great Demon King's teleportation hadn't taken them far, but they were still several kilometers away from the original location. "He'll come again soon. Prepare for another teleportation," Tang San said as he took the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's tokens from Mei Gongzi. She was indeed intelligent. The moment she figured out his intentions, she immediately took out the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's tokens and had them ready for him. Tang San calmly looked into the distance. In the dark, the Tenebrous Demon Emperor's pursuit speed was simply ridiculous. Their teleportation left traces in the night, and these normally inconspicuous traces were quite literally beacons for him to follow. Without any hesitation, Tang San threw out yet another small sword, and the astonishing sharpness reappeared. This time, even before the night fully descended, the massive sword radiance had already cleaved through the void. A large hand formed from darkness reached directly for the sword radiance. The Tenebrous Demon Emperor's icy voice echoed across the sky. "I want to see how many times you can make him strike for you." The sword radiance grew explosively, rising with the wind, and its intense soared to the heavens, slashing straight at the giant dark hand. The moment the dark hand collided with the sword radiance, an intense shockwave erupted, shaking the heavens and earth. The tenebrous demon emperor's dark hand was cleaved apart by the sword radiance, dissolving into nothingness. Taking advantage of this brief moment, the peacock great demon king quickly executed another teleportation, once again disappearing with Tang San and Mei Gongzi. The violent collision between the darkness and the sword radiance created a terrifying explosion of energy. Silver light flickered as the peacock great demon king exerted all his strength to teleport Tang San and Mei Gongzi away again. Although he knew that such teleportations were ultimately futile, as soon as the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's tokens were used up, they would still fall into the tenebrous demon emperor's grasp. Any extra moment of life, any additional time they could buy, might give them a chance. The peacock great demon king pushed himself to the limit, teleporting as far as he could. Tang San took out the third sword token and threw it without hesitation. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor raised his right hand again, a strange light shining in his eyes. He could sense thoughts, coming from his token far away. It was a very peculiar intention, a wave of belief transmitted through the token. What is the sword? This was the question from the first sword token. The sword is justice. This was the answer from the second. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor could be sure that this thought did not come from the peacock great demon king, but from the young man he had once acknowledged. What is the sword? Someone actually dares to ask me of all people what the sword is? When the first thought came, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor found it amusing. As the strongest swordsman of his time, who understood swords better than he did. But in spite of that, he still acted without hesitation. A gift that grand could not be received without any reciprocation, and he had the ancestors' honor to uphold. But when he received the second message, he couldn't help but be moved. The sword is justice? What is justice? He pondered, and then the third thought came through. The sword is judgment. As he felt the will behind this thought, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's eyes instantly brightened. Judgment. In that instant, he seemed to grasp something he'd been long missing. His right hand grabbed at the void, and a beam of light appeared within. The next moment, he and his sword became one, shooting out like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, a terrifying sword radiance slashed through the void. This time, it was an attack from the red-crowned divine sword. The sword is justice, the sword is judgment. This seemed to be what he had been searching for all along. So what else was there? As he unleashed the strike, he even felt a sense of eagerness within him. In the distance, Tang San activated the third sword token. In the void, a gigantic red-crowned crane seemed to appear, carrying unparalleled sharpness, crashing fiercely into the darkness. This time, it was as if the entire void shattered. Thousands of sword beams erupted, blocking all routes of the knight's invasion. Silver light flickered, and they teleported again. When the peacock great demon king saw the red-crowned crane appearing in the void, merging with the sword, he was shocked but also had a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Could it be that they really had a chance to escape? That was clearly the full support of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor, even though it was coming from afar. Even the Eternal Night Monarch wouldn't easily fend off an all-out attack from another Demon Emperor. Indeed, when they reappeared after teleporting again, the darkness did not immediately follow. The fourth sword token appeared in Tang San's hand, and he said to the peacock great demon king in a deep voice, "Please rest for a moment and prepare to teleport as far as you can." The peacock great demon king didn't speak. He just closed his eyes to restore his energy. None of them knew how long the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's full-force strike could hold back the enemy. This time it indeed lasted quite a while, a full 2 minutes. When the pervasive darkness descended again, the voice coming from within was tinged with frustration. "I want to see how many more tokens you have." The tenebrous Demon Emperor was filled with anger. Had the Sword Saint Demon Emperor gone mad? Even if the other had whatever tokens, it should have been one strike and done. But 3 times in a row and the third time a full-force attack. Why? He had never heard of any connection between the Sword Saint Demon Emperor and the Peacock Demon clan. In any case, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor himself was not here, and intervening remotely required a medium. Emperors were not omnipotent, after all. These people had to rely on the sword tokens, and they only had so many. Once the sword tokens were exhausted, Tang San and the others would still face certain death. Then he saw Tang San throw out the fourth sword token. Tang San's divine consciousness fluctuated, and he attached a message to the sword token. The massive figure of the red-crowned crane appeared once more, this time even clearer than before. Seeing this, the tenebrous demon emperor's expression changed drastically. From the increasingly clear figure of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor, He could sense that the latter was heading in his direction. The sword radiance, like a flowing ribbon, cut through the void. A calm voice resonated in the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's heart. The sword breaks all laws. This had always been the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's pursuit. It was also the direction he had always worked toward. These 5 simple words spoke directly to his heart. At this moment, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor felt an itch he couldn't scratch, wishing he could immediately sit down with the young man and discuss the true meaning of the sword. Silver light flashed again, and the teleportation was initiated once more. After a brief period of rest, the Peacock Great Demon King was able to teleport Tang San and Mei Gongzi even farther. With the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's full support from afar, the Tenebrous Demon Emperor would surely be affected for a longer time. However, both Mei Gongzi and the Peacock Great Demon King knew that the sword tokens were exhausted. Once the night descended again, they would have no chance of escape. Therefore, their expressions were grim. Even if the Peacock Great Demon King could perform another timely teleportation, it would not take them far enough. With the shadow following, they would be caught in an instant. "We have to fight," the Peacock Great Demon King said as the peacock golden crown slowly emerged on his forehead. Tang San turned to the Peacock Great Demon King, and his lips moved as if he were saying something. But Mei Gongzi was surprised to find that she couldn't hear his voice. Then she saw Tang San raise his hand, and in his palm, there was another token, a 5th sword token. Where did he get a 5th one? This was the sword token Tang San had received when he had climbed the Sword Saint Palace and ultimately gained the recognition of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. Naturally, Mei Gongzi had no way of knowing about it, but she didn't dwell on it too much. The important thing was that he had it, and even though this was likely the last one, she felt a slight sense of relief upon seeing it. Even if it only bought them a little more time, it meant they could live a bit longer. The Peacock Great Demon King's expression was somewhat strange at this moment. He looked at Tang San, wanting to say something, but hesitated. Tang San gave him a calm nod. Then, to Mei Gongzi's astonishment, he came over to her, opened his arms, and embraced her. Because there was no warning, Mei Gongzi didn't even have time to react before Tang San was already holding her. He had a pleasant scent, fresh and elegant. Despite facing life and death, Mei Gongzi found herself feeling oddly at peace. Then his voice whispered in her ear, "Take care of yourself." 1. The original word here is rather difficult to translate. It does mean idea/thought in the normal sense, and it is used like that, but it also refers to intention and will. It implies that what is transmitted is not just a plain message but something full of intent. Mei Gongzi suddenly felt that his voice seemed to have changed, somewhat familiar yet also strange. It was familiar because she felt she had heard it before, but strange because it did not seem to belong to the Azura she knew. In this brief moment, in the distance, the endless night once again obscured the light of the stars and moon, slowly arriving, spreading like dark clouds across the sky. The Tenebrous Demon Emperor didn't even make another sound, but the overwhelming darkness was filled with an equally overwhelming intent to kill. Tang San nodded to the Peacock Great Demon King, then raised the 5th sword token in his hand. The sharp sword light shot up to the sky, carrying an unparalleled, brilliant sword intent, along with a strong and intense energy fluctuation. It carried the will of the Sword Saint Demon Emperor. Once again, it transformed into a red-crowned crane that charged straight at the Tenebrous Demon Emperor. Tang San closed his eyes slightly, smiling as he murmured to himself, "The sword is sacrifice." Silver light flickered, and before Mei Gongzi realized it, it had already enveloped her and the Peacock Great Demon King. But this time, it did not envelop Tang San. Mei Gongzi wanted to stretch her hand to grab him, only to realize that she was restrained by her father's spatial power. The last thing she saw was only that tall, straight back disappearing before her. And then, there was only silver light. Time seemed to slow down, but in that instant, she clearly felt as if something most important in her heart had vanished into thin air. "No!" she shouted. Or at least she tried to shout, but in the spatial channel, though her lips moved, no sound came out. He never turned back to look at her, because he feared that if he did, he wouldn't be able to bear the parting. She was worried because of the words of the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, but he understood far more than she did from these words. The Celestial Fox Demon Emperor had likely noticed something about Tang San, and even this pursuit was likely tacitly approved by him. If Tang San escaped this pursuit, he would have a chance. If he didn't, it would mean extinction. This seemed to be what the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor wanted to tell him. After all, he was human. He was different from Mei Gongzi. She clearly inherited the Peacock Great Demon King's bloodline, as well as the White Tiger Demon Emperor's. But even the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor couldn't tell what was going on with Tang San. Though he had shown 2 bloodlines, he was not affiliated with either of those clans. And what about his other abilities? The Tenebrous Demon Emperor was certain to come, considering what they'd done to his successor. And if they didn't teleport fast enough, far enough, even the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor might arrive, and that would spell death for them, no ifs and buts. Thus, understanding the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's intentions, Tang San began preparing. The divine items he'd chosen and the red-crowned divine sword he had gifted were all part of this preparation. But Tang San knew that to escape the death trap described by the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor, these alone wouldn't be enough. All his preparations would certainly be within the grasp of the Master of Destiny. No, to seek life on the brink of death, to have even the slightest chance at survival, he had to break free from the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's control. So, when the sword tokens were exhausted, he stayed behind. He chose to face the danger himself, even if it meant fighting an emperor. With his current abilities, it basically amounted to striking a stone with an egg, but it was also the key to whether he could truly establish himself in this plane. This was the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's message. If he could survive the pursuit of an emperor, then he would be qualified to aim at becoming the strongest in this plane. It meant he would have a chance to protect himself and that the Peacock Demon clan would have an opportunity to rise again. With the Celestial Fox Demon Emperor's abilities, he could certainly see the blood pact between him and Mei Gongzi, so at least for now, he would consider Tang San part of the Peacock Demon clan and let him do what he wanted. The darkness and the sword light collided again, resulting in a rain of light filled with unparalleled, brilliant energy. The terrifying energy affected an area dozens of miles in diameter, causing the entire sky to tremble violently. This was a clash between 2 emperors. It would have extinguished all life within that range if it had been on the ground. Even emperors had their limitations. They were bound by the constraints of the ancestral court, and they dared not easily affect the continent's ecosystem. Thus, their clashes could only occur in the sky. Amid that violent collision, Tang San's eyes lit up. 2 motes of golden light appeared in his pupils. The golden radiance overflowed, spreading from his eyes to his forehead and then down his entire body, enveloping him in golden light. During this process, his aura began to surge rapidly. An illusory golden figure emerged behind him, soaring upward from 2 meters to 5 meters, then to 10 meters, 20 meters, and then finally stopping at a height of 100 meters. The light figure was illusory, but the fluctuations of its divine consciousness made the space that had just experienced a violent collision seem to quiet down. The endless darkness that seemed capable of annihilating everything halted. A purple figure stepped out of the void against the backdrop of darkness, eyes full of shock as it looked at the huge golden figure not far in front of it. The 100-meter-tall golden figure's face was unclear, but it could be vaguely seen that he wore golden armor, had a tall and slender figure, and had long blue hair flowing behind him. In his hand, a trident shone with brilliant golden light, causing the Tenebrous Demon Emperor's heart to tremble. The strange fluctuations of divine consciousness seemed to suppress the entire space around him. Even as an emperor, the Tenebrous Demon Emperor felt his divine consciousness quiver at this moment. An emperor. This was without a doubt the aura of an emperor, and he seemed to be no ordinary emperor. Although it didn't seem to be the true body, the Tenebrous Demon Emperor's heart was filled with unparalleled shock. He knew better than anyone that this emperor was not someone from the ancestral court, but an unknown existence. An existence of truly high caliber. "Who are you?" the Tenebrous Demon Emperor asked in a deep voice. At the same time, the endless darkness, accompanied by the dull luster of the withering domain, gathered behind him. The originally dark sky turned into a deep purple, and a massive purple vortex coiled and swirled behind him. A strange voice seemed to emanate from the void. "I am the Sea God." With these simple words, the massive golden figure slowly raised the gigantic trident in his right hand, pointing it at the sky. Immediately, a brilliant golden light shot up into the sky, piercing the heavens and illuminating the darkness. The entire space violently trembled, and the earth below quaked, but the terrifying divine consciousness emanating from the sea god seemed to suppress everything. The Tenebrous Demon Emperor dared not be negligent. He held his hands in front of him, and a purple-black orb appeared in his grasp. It looked like a crystal ball with countless lights and shadows swirling inside. Instantly, dragon-shaped shadows as black as ink surrounded the Tenebrous Demon Emperor, 9 shadows flickering into being. This was his most powerful divine weapon, the 9 Tenebrous Dragons. As the name implied, the 9 Tenebrous Dragons contained the souls of 9 Tenebrous Dragons. One of these was even the soul of a demon emperor, while the rest were the great demon kings. Legend had it that if the 9 Tenebrous Dragons orb actually came to include the souls of 9 demon emperor dragons with complementary attributes, it could transcend the very plane and become a complete, independent realm. Faced with this unknown emperor, the tenebrous demon emperor had immediately pulled out his strongest weapon, which revealed the great apprehension he had toward the being in front of him. At that moment, the radiant golden trident flew at him seemingly out of nowhere. Thousands of golden rays pierced the darkness, heading straight for the tenebrous demon emperor. The sea god's divine technique, fury of the masses. An indescribable, overwhelming pressure shocked the tenebrous demon emperor, especially as he could clearly feel that his control over the darkness element seemed to dissipate under this terrifying aura. The golden light emitted by the trident seemed to have a natural, strong suppressive force, making it hard for him to breathe. Even when facing demon emperors ranked above him, he had never felt this way. At this moment, he was beyond shocked. Not daring to be negligent, he fully activated the 9 tenebrous dragons in his hand. 9 dragon souls surged out from the 9 tenebrous dragons, transforming into shadows that wildly swirled in front of him, blocking the golden rays. The darkness and golden light touched and vanished, as if they were melting, but more dark power continuously flowed into the 9 shadows, replenishing their consumption. The massive golden figure did not pause either. The golden trident in his hand moved in seemingly illusory patterns, and golden light rings floated out, one above, one below, one to the left, and one to the right. In an instant, dozens of golden rings floated over. When the 9 dragons released by the orb touched these rings, they were immediately trapped as if in a cage, unable to move. More golden rings directly surrounded the tenebrous demon emperor. The tenebrous demon emperor's heart tightened as he felt the tremendous pressure. Even his divine consciousness was forcibly locked at this moment, making him feel as if he couldn't even move his thoughts. He still wanted to put all his power into the 9 tenebrous dragons, but those golden rings had already surrounded him, rendering him immobile. Unprecedented fear instantly filled his heart. He had never expected such an opponent to exist. He was the eternal night sovereign, and within the darkness, he was supposed to be at his strongest state, yet under the oppressive force of that terrifying golden trident, he felt as if he couldn't muster any strength at all. The overpowering pressure confined the tenebrous demon emperor and all his power within that small area. Then he saw the golden figure slowly raise the golden trident that made his heart palpitate intensely. A strong killing intent instantly surrounded him, locking his divine consciousness. The tenebrous demon emperor even felt that he would be completely destroyed in the next moment. He desperately tried to struggle, but in the face of the golden rings encircling him, he couldn't break free at all, not even a bit. What to do? How could this happen? For the first time in countless years, he felt his emotions were out of control. He never expected such a powerful opponent to appear, one so strong that he couldn't resist at all. A flash of silver light, and the peacock great demon king appeared out of thin air in the wilderness with Mei Gongzi. No! Only now could Mei Gongzi's voice shoot out of her throat, and with that, she broke into sobs. She wanted to struggle, but she was firmly restrained by her father. At that moment, she suddenly felt as if something within her had been extinguished. No! Mei Gongzi cried out once more. She could now feel what it was that she had lost. The power of the blood oath. The bond between her and the Azura had been severed. It was completely gone, and the severing of the bond meant only one possibility. The one at the other end had perished. Tears uncontrollably streamed down. She finally understood why Azura and her father had been speaking in secret. He clearly intended to stay behind for her and her father, bearing everything alone. And although she didn't know how he had done it, it was clear that the tenebrous demon emperor wasn't following them anymore. But neither did Azura. The peacock great demon king seemed to sense something as well. He came from mystery and returned to mystery. He was your fated benefactor. What a pity. He genuinely felt regret for that young man. He had entrusted him with everything, revealing his deepest secrets. Unfortunately, from beginning to end, Azura had remained calm, repeatedly using the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's sword tokens to block the tenebrous demon emperor, until finally they managed to escape. Without pausing, he grabbed his daughter, ignoring her cries. Silver light rose again, sweeping them up, and they teleported away, disappearing once more. Blinding sword light streaked across the night sky. When an emperor traveled at full speed, their speed was absolutely astonishing. In the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's heart, it felt as if something was boiling. That voice had to pose the question, and that voice had given him many answers. The sword is justice, the sword is judgment, the sword breaks all laws, the sword is sacrifice. Simple explanations, but each one touched his soul, filling the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's heart with a strong impulse. After the 5th sword token was activated, he once again struck with all his might across the void. He even cursed the tenebrous demon emperor in his heart. But he knew he was probably too late, the distance was simply too great. The Peacock Great Demon King's first teleportation was too far. What puzzled him was why the clever young man, having already summoned him, didn't have the Peacock Great Demon King teleport in the opposite direction, back to the ancestral court. If he used the time gained from the 5 tokens to teleport back, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor might have reached them in time to help. The next moment he had the answer. He saw a brilliant light in the distance, moving just a little slower than his own speed. That light was the divine consciousness of an emperor. Yes, an emperor. That was clearly the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor. To think that 2 kids plus the Peacock Great Demon King managed to have 2 emperors chase them. Damn. I have to say, that is impressive. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor accelerated with all his might, chasing the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor. At this moment, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor seemed to sense his presence and slowed down. The distance between them gradually shortened until they were flying side by side. Your Majesty Sword Saint, you are. Although the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor was also an emperor, he was the youngest and weakest. He was very respectful toward the Sword Saint Demon Emperor, especially since the latter's power did not quite match his ranking. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor said in a deep voice, "Are you going after those from the Peacock Demon Clan?" The Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor replied in a deep voice, "Indeed, my clan has a blood feud with the Peacock Demon Clan. Let's catch up first. Tenebrous is already chasing them over there. I just felt the call of the sword token and fought him across space. Now, I'm afraid." Hearing this, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor was shocked. He had no idea that the Tenebrous Demon Emperor had also taken action, so he couldn't help but frown. What? Did the Tenebrous Demon Emperor also make a move? Weren't you all in agreement? The Sword Saint Demon Emperor asked in confusion. The Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor shook his head. No. This is bad. Let's go quickly. He did want to kill the Peacock Great Demon King, but he had complex feelings toward the man's daughter. After all, while it was his daughter, she also happened to be the only child of the woman he loved the most. If she died, what would the love of his life do? Although Mei Gongzi's talent was astonishing and she clearly posed a great threat, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor had not made up his mind to kill her. His target was the Peacock Great Demon King. No matter how talented Mei Gongzi was, she was not yet at the god level, and without that level of power at the minimum, it was impossible for her to hold Kali City. In this situation, as long as he killed the Peacock Great Demon King and took control of Kali City, everything would be much easier to handle. However, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor never expected that the Tenebrous Demon Emperor would personally take action. Was it just for Meng Didi? That was impossible. The emperors took great pride in their status, so how could he slap his own face like that? And now, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor had actively come to protect the Peacock Demon Clan, making the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor even more puzzled. But no matter what, they had to catch up first. The 2 demon emperors exchanged no more words. They fully accelerated, flying at their fastest speed. In this full-speed flight, the difference between them became apparent. Both the Crystal Phoenixes and the Red-Crowned Cranes were avian demons, obviously fast flyers yet neither particularly known for their speed. But the Sword Saint Demon Emperor, in his state of unity with the sword, was moving significantly faster than the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor. At this moment, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor had no intention of waiting for others. He simply darted forward with all the speed he could muster. The Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor chased with all his might but could only watch as the distance between them grew. He was helpless. After all, the other was a veteran powerhouse. Moreover, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's cultivation seemed even higher than the rumors said. This Sword Saint was known as the poorest emperor of his time, yet he was in no way lacking in cultivation. Finally, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor seemed to sense something. Sword light surged and he instantly flashed over. A pitch-black figure hovered in the sky. Even though the figure did not move a single finger, the sheer aura of darkness it radiated filled the space around it, even darker than night itself. It was the Eternal Night Sovereign. If it were daytime, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor would even be confident in defeating him, but at night, his chances of winning were only 1 or 2 in 10 at best. This was the difference between the Eternal Night Sovereign at noon versus midnight. Where are they? The Sword Saint Demon Emperor's cold voice rang out. The sword light retracted, transforming into a human figure that appeared not far in front of the Tenebrous Demon Emperor. The Tenebrous Demon Emperor's face remained icy as he hovered in midair. Which one of them are you actually asking about? That young man, the one called Azura, the Sword Saint Demon Emperor said without hesitation. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, the Tenebrous Demon Emperor said flatly. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor's pupils contracted, and his sword intent surged. He suddenly had a realization. The sword is sacrifice. He clearly remembered the young man's last message to him. Sacrifice. Had he really sacrificed himself? Although he was a step behind the Sword Saint Demon Emperor, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor was still in time to hear their exchange. What about the Peacock Great Demon King and his daughter? They escaped, said the Tenebrous Demon Emperor indifferently. Upon hearing this answer, both the Sword Saint Demon Emperor and the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor felt incredulous. In front of a veteran emperor, how could the Peacock Great Demon King escape? He wasn't in Kali City, now was he? They both naturally overlooked people like Azura and Mei Gongzi. No matter how talented they were, champions of the elite competition and whatnot, they were still just some kids from the younger generation. Anyone below the god level wasn't even on their radar. The Tenebrous Demon Emperor had personally pursued them, at night no less, yet they had managed to escape? This was not just surprising, but downright absurd. The Tenebrous Demon Emperor coldly said, "That young man called Azura invoked some special powers to block me, allowing them to escape. They should have returned to Kali City by now. The ancestral court had very strict rules. Even emperors couldn't act arbitrarily against a main city. The Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor had a somewhat legitimate reason for causing trouble before, but now he had no reason to act. The Peacock Great Demon King said they would be safe once they returned to Kali City, and he had good reason for it. Even for the ancestral court, reclaiming control of a main city wasn't an easy task. Azura had allegedly invoked some special power to block the Tenebrous Demon Emperor, allowing the Peacock Great Demon King and his daughter to escape. This left the Sword Saint Demon Emperor and the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor feeling absolutely stunned. But the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor felt a slight relief. At least the girl was still alive. "I'm leaving." The Tenebrous Demon Emperor seemed unwilling to continue the conversation. His icy gaze swept over them before he transformed into darkness, disappearing into the night. The Sword Saint Demon Emperor stood in place, closed his eyes, and extended his divine consciousness around him. A moment later, he sensed the remnants of a powerful divine consciousness. Clearly, a battle had taken place here. A very intense clash between two divine consciousnesses, specifically. However, the remaining traces were very weak, leaving little evidence. The Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor was also quietly sensing the surroundings. His divine consciousness wasn't as strong as the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's, so he perceived less of what had occurred. But the fact that the Tenebrous Demon Emperor failed to capture the Peacock Great Demon King and his daughter still left them both in disbelief. An emperor wouldn't lie. It was a matter of dignity. Moreover, there was no point for the Tenebrous Demon Emperor to lie either. It was easy for them to uncover the truth with a little investigation. So, if he said that they had escaped, then they had escaped. In the Sword Saint Demon Emperor's mind, he reconstructed the scene. Azura, at the cost of his life, had triggered the explosion of a divine weapon or something similar. This barely blocked the Tenebrous Demon Emperor's path and severed his lock on the Peacock Great Demon King and his daughter, preventing the Tenebrous Demon Emperor from succeeding in his pursuit. For a young man who wasn't even a god, it was something to be proud of. But on the other hand, he had given them 5 sword tokens. So why had those 2 youngsters refused to come to the Sword Saint Palace to seek his aid? Even though he had helped them from afar, the fact that they had returned the red-crowned crane's imperial treasure without any strings attached made it so his help didn't actually count as repayment. And that young man named Azura, when the Sword Saint Demon Emperor first sensed him climbing the sacred mountain in the Sword Saint Palace, he greatly admired him. And today, Azura's understanding of the sword impressed him, truly impressed him. Unfortunately, it was all too late. Azura used his life to truly illustrate to him what it meant for the sword to be a sacrifice. It was a pity he hadn't gotten to see Azura's final strike. But to be able to block a demon emperor while not being a god himself, even in death, he had every reason to be proud. As he gazed in the direction of Kali City, the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor's eyes were complicated. He had originally planned to intercept the Peacock Great Demon King outside the ancestral court, kill him, capture Mei Gongzi, and then take over Kali City. This was the decision he had made after meeting the Peacock Great Demon King that day. But in the end, he had let the tiger return to the mountain. Kali City was the main city the Peacock Demon clan had managed for many years, and even as an emperor, he had to be cautious. The injuries he sustained from his last visit hadn't fully healed yet. It seemed that more planning was needed. "Your Majesty Sword Saint, I am returning as well. All right, let's go back together." The Sword Saint Demon Emperor and the Crystal Phoenix Demon Emperor exchanged a glance, then simultaneously rose and flew toward the ancestral court. The 2 figures disappeared into the distance, and the divine consciousness in the air slowly dissipated, as if nothing had happened here. About half a day after the 3 demon emperors left, the sky brightened. The sunlight bathed the earth, bringing warmth and the breath of life. Under the bright sunlight, the air suddenly twisted slightly. It was a very faint distortion, almost impossible to notice unless observed from a very close distance. After a few seconds, the air twisted slightly again. Gradually, the frequency of the distortion's appearance increased, eventually changing from intermittent to continuous, and from a single point of distortion to an area. Time and space seemed to become strange. The distorted area appeared incongruous with everything around it. Suddenly, light and shadows flickered, and all the distortions converged toward a single point. A figure appeared out of thin air, and all the twisted light and shadows instantly gathered toward it. The mask on Tang San's face had disappeared, revealing his true appearance. He was completely naked, and every single hair on his body had vanished, indicating that his previous experience had been anything but usual. The distorted light and shadows fluctuated faintly on his chest, an effect of the space-time beacon he had obtained at the grand auction. The space-time beacon slowly settled on his chest, and another ring of distorted light emerged. A large amethyst appeared out of nowhere, floating above Tang San's head. A faint purple halo descended, injecting pure, purple light into his forehead. This was a silent wilderness, devoid of people or beasts. In fact, even if there were normally demonic beasts in this area, after the Tenebrous Demon Emperor's visit last night, no creatures would dare to approach this place, which now seemed like a forbidden zone for a good number of days. The purple halo continuously flowed in, and some items drifted out of the space-time beacon one by one, among them Tang San's 2 storage rings. Tang San's forehead continued to absorb energy, like a bottomless pit. The large amethyst gradually dimmed. By the time night fell again, the crystal had become entirely dull. It fell onto the ground and rolled to the side, now nearly transparent. Tang San's eyelids trembled slightly. Even his eyelashes had disappeared. As his eyelids twitched, his skin began to crack, starting from his eyelids and extending across his body, turning into fragments that scattered in the air. Fresh, tender skin emerged, giving him a rather eerie appearance. With tearful eyes, Mei Gongzi stood by the window, repeatedly murmuring, "Big brother, you haven't taken off your mask yet. How could you leave me?" That's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.